My name is Jesse Fly. I farm in Northeast Arkansas. The government shutdown is currently putting a great stress on our operation. This stress becomes larger every day. We urge Congress to reopen the government. Every day this doesn't happen, it punishes us.
My name is John McDaniel. I'm a cotton farmer from Tipton County, Tennessee. We're about halfway through with our cotton harvest this fall, but this year with the government shutdown, we're not able to get our cotton classed and enrolled in the USDA loan program. We need the government open. We need USDA and its programs to help us cash flow and to market this crop because we can't sell with prices where they are.
My name is Catherine Boulin, and I'm an Iowa farmer, and every day is not getting better for hardworking Americans. Families like mine are stretching every dollar while Washington plays politics.
As a farmer in central Iowa, I'm telling you that every day the government is shut down, hardworking Americans continue to suffer.
My name's Buddy Hughes, and I'm a small builder developer from Lexington, North Carolina. I'm here today to urge Congress to end this shutdown as soon as possible, because any federal program that touches housing, from loan processing to block grants, is slowing down.
We got about 18,000 Iowans that are gonna not get paid soon. We're gonna lose our SNAP benefits.
I'm a wife to an air traffic controller. We are already seeing the effects of it on our family.
Hello, my name is Mike Wanklin. I'm a firefighter at Joint Base Myers and All in Arlington, Virginia. This government shutdown is causing much unneeded stress for a job that is already stressful. Not knowing when the next paycheck is coming is terrifying. We all have rent due, car payments, mortgages, and overall need to provide for our families.
My name is Bryce Morgan, president of IFF Local F88, Federal Firefighters for Wright Pat Air Force Base. With the already recognized deficiencies in our pay and hours worked, we are currently being forced to work for no pay until a budget or continuing resolution passes Congress. I'm asking Congress to reach an agreement for the budget so we, the ones who support the missions at military installations, can have a burden lifted and get back to normalcy of our everyday lives.
Hi, my name is Wes, and I'm a federal firefighter. My crew and I are still reporting for duty every day, protecting lives, property, and our nation. But during the government shutdown, we're doing it without pay. We're essential employees, so we don't get to stay home. We're proud to serve, but our families are struggling while Congress fails to do its job. To every member of Congress, your decisions have real consequences. We're here when America needs us. Please come together and fund the government.
I'm Kelly Durick, wife of Lieutenant Gregory Durick with the Mid-Atlantic Navy Regional Fire Department. My husband protects our military bases every single day. Fires, medical emergencies, you name it. He doesn't get to stop just because the government shut down. Federal firefighters keep showing up for this country. It's our time our government shows up for them with fair, on-time pay for the work they've already done.
My name is Josh, a federal firefighter with 18 years of service to the federal government. I'm a husband and father of 3, and the conversations I have recently had with my wife are ones that I thought would never have to happen. And not knowing when my next paycheck is coming has had us talk about possibly canceling my son's upcoming birthday party. Please, we ask that you do what you can. We've done our part. We show up to work. We do our job. We just ask that you please find a resolution.
My name is Matthew Silverman, and I serve as the national president for the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, representing almost 35,000 federal agents and officers. As you know, our federal agents and officers are on the streets on a daily basis, ensuring the safety of all of our citizens. And right now, they are doing this without being paid. I have received over 100 phone calls and emails explaining to me that these members are unsure if they are going to be able to pay their bills, pay their mortgage, or put food on the tables for their families.
I'm Ross Vieira. As a military veteran, I see firsthand how the government shutdown isn't just political games. It's hurting real families. We're struggling as the services are stalled and our nation's security is compromised. This is not a time for partisan games, and the Democrats need to stop holding everything hostage and reopen the government now.
Under the previous order, leadership time is reserved. Under the previous order, Senate will be in a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each. The senator from Iowa.
Keeping quantity and quality of health care in rural America is a constant responsibility of most senators, because every senator, even if you come from a high population state, you still have a lot of rural areas. So one of the things that I've been interested in is keeping hospital services available in rural areas, even if they have a hard time keeping their beds part of their hospital. So, in December 2020, I was proud to sponsor and to pass into law the voluntary rural emergency hospital program under Medicare. CMS implemented this program 3 years later in 2023. The Rural Emergency Hospital Program allows rural hospitals to voluntarily right-size their healthcare infrastructure while maintaining essential medical services for their rural communities. It gives these hospitals the flexibility to operate without hospital inpatient services while still retaining a 24/7 emergency department, ambulance services, outpatient services, and more. To date, 42 rural hospitals in 17 states have transitioned to a rural emergency hospital model and hence are still operating. Some states are still working to establish the necessary hospital licensing flexibility so that they can participate in this program. Rural emergency hospitals have been beneficial for many rural communities, and I want to give you 3 examples. In Friend, Nebraska, going to rural emergency hospital model has, quote, meant a lifeline, end of quote, for that community. In Union Springs, Alabama, the rural emergency hospital model has allowed their hospitals to, quote, remain open instead of leaving a void in the community, end of quote. In Scotland, South Dakota, their rural emergency hospital will, quote, enhance local health services. I will submit a longer list of examples of how rural emergency hospitals have benefited rural communities to date. I look forward to more rural hospitals converting in the near future. Given it's been 5 years since the program became law, I would like to better understand the challenges of rural hospitals and communities face when considering rural emergency hospital programs. So I'm pursuing getting that information because I am committed to ensuring the rural emergency hospital remains a viable tool for rural hospitals and their communities. I recently sent letters to existing rural emergency hospital CEOs and other rural health care leaders to get this information. I look forward to their feedback and continuing to strengthen rural health care, and I will keep my constituents in Iowa and my Senate colleagues so informed. I yield.
Mr. President.
Senate Leader.
Mr. President, I move to proceed to calendar number 168, H.R. 5371.
Clerk will report.
Motion to proceed to calendar number 168, H.R. 5371, an act making continuing appropriations and extensions for fiscal year 2026 and for other purposes.
Mr. President, I understand that there is a bill at the desk that is due for a second reading.
The leader is correct. The clerk will read the title of the bill for the second time.
S3012, a bill to appropriate funds for pay and allowances of accepted federal employees for periods of work performed during a lapse in appropriations and for other purposes.
Mr. President, in order to place a bill on the calendar under the provision of Rule 14, I would object to further proceeding.
Objection is heard, so the item will be placed on the calendar under Rule 14.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this morning we will offer my Democrat colleagues yet another opportunity to vote to reopen the government. To vote to reopen the government with a clean, nonpartisan CR. That's right. We are not asking Democrats to swallow any new Republican policies. We're not asking them to swallow any partisan policy riders. We're simply asking them to extend current funding levels for a few weeks while we work on full-year appropriations. And you don't have to take my word for it. Everyone from the president of the Teamsters Union, mainstream media outlets, has confirmed that the CR Republicans have put forward is a clean CR. But Senate Democrats chose to shut down the government anyway. Now, Mr. President, Democrats' ostensible reason for their 16-day shutdown is because they want Republicans to agree to bail out the health care mess that Democrats created, first with Obamacare, and then by passing and then sunsetting enhanced Obamacare tax credits that were put in place for the COVID emergency, which I think, as we all know, is long behind us. And despite the fact that we're only in this position because of Democrats' poor policy choices, Republicans are ready for that discussion. I'm ready. My colleagues are ready. The Speaker and the President are ready. But, Mr. President, only once we've reopened the government. We're not conducting negotiations in a hostage situation. And we're not going to pay $1.5 trillion ransom to get Democrats to reopen government operations. That's right, Mr. President, $1.5 trillion. That's what Democrats are demanding. Between their Obamacare bailout and the other partisan policies that they've included, they want a $1.5 trillion ransom to reopen the government for a handful of weeks. Now, to put that number in perspective, that's the equivalent to almost 1/4 of the entire 2024 federal budget. Again, just to reopen the federal government for a handful of weeks. Now, think about that, Mr. President. Their proposal, $1.5 trillion in new spending, free health care benefits for non-citizens, to open the government until October 31st. That's what their proposal is. So literally, the American taxpayer is supposed to pay $1.5 trillion so that the Democrats can open the government until Halloween, 2 weeks from now. $1.5 trillion for 2 weeks. That's what we're talking about here. Now, just imagine this for a minute, Mr. President, what might happen if we pay that ransom and agree to the Democrats' $1.5 trillion demand. Well, what's going to happen the next time we need a continuing resolution? How much are Democrats going to demand then? Well, we have to add another $1.5 trillion every time we want to fund the government. And they want to do it for 2 weeks. $1.5 trillion for 2 weeks. I mean, where does this end? When taxpayers and our economy have been totally destroyed by Democrats' profligate spending, is that where it ends? No, Mr. President. While I am more than happy to discuss ways to alleviate Democrats' health care mess, we're not paying $1.5 trillion, a $1.5 trillion ransom to reopen the federal government. Now, Mr. President, as frustrated as I am with their continued refusal to reopen the government, I do have to say that I have some sympathy for Senate Democrats. While they may claim health care is the driver of what they're doing, we all know that the primary reason we're in this mess is because Democrats' far-left base demanded a showdown with President Trump. Just 7 months ago, the Democrat leader voted with Republicans to keep the government open because he said, while he didn't like the CR, a government shutdown would be, quote, much worse. Far worse, end quote. But he caught a whole lot of flack for that decision from the far left. And so now, he's leading the shutdown charge. He's not the only Democrat who voted to fund the government march. He's now a member of the shutdown brigade. But, Mr. President, no matter how much pressure their far-left base is exerting, we still need some Democrats to do the right thing. It would take just a handful of Democrats to reopen the government. Just a handful of Democrats to enable us to resume paying air traffic controllers, law enforcement officers, and all of the other federal workers. Just a handful of Democrats to get the federal government working again for the American people. Later today, Democrats are going to have another opportunity to make the right decision. Two opportunities, in fact. They're going to have a chance to vote on the clean, nonpartisan CR, which, as I said, in the past sits right there at the desk, which has passed the House of Representatives. We can pick this up with 5 more Democrat votes, pass it today, send it to the President signs it into law, and the government reopens. So they're going to have a chance to vote on that yet again. And they're going to have a chance to vote to advance full-year defense appropriations legislation, so that if we can't reopen the entire government, we can at least make some progress toward securing paychecks for our troops and for defending our country. Just last week, the Senate passed the National Defense Authorization Act, which is essential legislation, something that we do every year to authorize defense spending and to authorize a pay raise for our troops. So this is Democrats' chance to make good on that promise by funding the raise. The authorization bill authorized it. The defense appropriations bill that we will vote on here later today will actually fund that raise so our troops can get paid. Now again, I realize that Democrats' far-left base is rallying in D.C. this weekend, which puts extra pressure on Democrats. But I hope that they'll do the right thing anyway and vote to reopen the government. All we need is 5. Bill's right there. Goes to the President, he signs into law. Government reopens. Mr. President, the American people are depending on some, I'm hoping, Democrats who are willing to put the interest of the American people ahead of the interests of their far-left base. Mr. President, I yield the floor. I seek quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alsterbrooks.
dare to scream at two terrifying worlds of fear. Creepy world!
With a clean, nonpartisan CR. That's right. We are not asking Democrats to swallow any new Republican policies. We're not asking them to swallow any partisan policy riders. We're simply asking them to extend current funding levels for a few weeks while we work on full-year appropriations. And you don't have to take my word for it. Everyone from the president of the Teamsters Union to mainstream media outlets has confirmed that the CR Republicans have put forward is a clean CR. But Senate Democrats chose to shut down the government anyway. Now, Mr. President, Democrats' ostensible reason for their 16-day shutdown is because they want Republicans to agree to bail out the health care mess that Democrats created, first with Obamacare, and then by passing and then sunsetting enhanced Obamacare tax credits that were put in place for the COVID emergency, which I think, as we all know, is long behind us. And despite the fact that we're only in this position because of Democrats' poor policy choices, Republicans are ready for that discussion. I'm ready. My colleagues are ready. The Speaker and the President are ready. But, Mr. President, only once we've reopened the government. We're not conducting negotiations in a hostage situation. And we're not going to pay $1.5 trillion ransom to get Democrats to reopen government operations. That's right, Mr. President, $1.5 trillion. That's what Democrats are demanding. Between their Obamacare bailout and the other partisan policies that they've included, they want a $1.5 trillion ransom to reopen the government for a handful of weeks. Now, to put that number in perspective, that's the equivalent to almost 1/4 of the entire 2024 federal budget. Again, just to reopen the federal government for a handful of weeks. Now, think about that, Mr. President. Their proposal, $1.5 trillion in new spending, free health care benefits for non-citizens, to open the government until October 31st. That's what their proposal is. So literally, the American taxpayer is supposed to pay $1.5 trillion so that the Democrats can open the government until Halloween, 2 weeks from now. $1.5 trillion for 2 weeks. That's what we're talking about here. Now, just imagine this for a minute, Mr. President, what might happen if we pay that ransom and agree to the Democrats' $1.5 trillion demand. Well, what's going to happen the next time we need a continuing resolution? How much are Democrats going to demand then? Will we have to add another $1.5 trillion every time we want to fund the government? And they want to do it for 2 weeks. $1.5 trillion for 2 weeks. I mean, where does this end? When taxpayers and our economy have been totally destroyed by Democrats' profligate spending? Is that where it ends? No, Mr. President. While I am more than happy to discuss ways to alleviate Democrats' health care mess, we're not paying $1.5 trillion, a $1.5 trillion ransom to reopen the federal government. Now, Mr. President, as frustrated as I am with their continued refusal to reopen the government, I do have to say that I have some sympathy for Senate Democrats. While they may claim health care as the driver of what they're doing, we all know that the primary reason we're in this mess is because Democrats' far-left base demanded a showdown with President Trump. Just 7 months ago, the Democrat leader voted with Republicans to keep the government open because he said, while he didn't like the CR, a government shutdown would be, quote, much worse far worse, end quote. But he caught a whole lot of flack for that decision from the far left. And so now, he's leading the shutdown charge. And he's not the only Democrat who voted to fund the government march. He's now a member of the shutdown brigade. But, Mr. President, no matter how much pressure their far-left base is exerting, we still need some Democrats to do the right thing. It would take just a handful of Democrats to reopen the government. Just a handful of Democrats to enable us to resume paying air traffic controllers, law enforcement officers, and all of the other federal workers. Just a handful of Democrats to get the federal government working again for the American people. Later today, Democrats are going to have another opportunity to make the right decision. Two opportunities, in fact. They're going to have a chance to vote on the clean, nonpartisan CR, which, as I said, in the past sits right there at the desk, which has passed the House of Representatives. We can pick this up with 5 more Democrat votes, pass it today, send it to the President signs it into law, and the government reopens. So they're going to have a chance to vote on that yet again. And they're going to have a chance to vote to advance full-year defense appropriations legislation, so that if we can't reopen the entire government, we can at least make some progress toward securing paychecks for our troops and for defending our country. Just last week, the Senate passed the National Defense Authorization Act, which is essential legislation, something that we do every year to authorize defense spending and to authorize a pay raise for our troops. So this is Democrats' chance to make good on that promise by funding the raise. The authorization bill authorized it. The defense appropriations bill that we will vote on here later today will actually fund that raise so our troops can get paid. Now again, I realize that Democrats' far-left base is rallying in D.C. this weekend, which puts extra pressure on Democrats. But I hope that they'll do the right thing anyway and vote to reopen the government. All we need is 5. Bill's right there. Goes to the President, he signs into law. Government reopens. Mr. President, the American people are depending on some, I'm hoping, Democrats who are willing to put the interests of the American people ahead of the interests of their far-left base. Mr. President, I yield the floor. I seek quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alsterbrooks.
And another week has passed, and the Trump shutdown drags on because Republicans refuse to work with or even negotiate with Democrats in a serious way to fix the health care crisis in America. Let's be clear. Republicans are demanding something that hasn't happened in previous negotiations. They're saying our way or the highway. No negotiation, no Democratic input. This is a highly partisan bill. And they want us to pass this partisan CR that has 0 bipartisan inputs, 0 conversation, and frankly, 0 relief for so many Americans who are afflicted by the health care crisis, which grows deeper and deeper, that crisis, each day. For the last month, the Republican leader's favorite number has been 13. He keeps citing 13 CRs that we passed when I was majority leader. Of course we did. What he fails to mention, I'm not sure he forgets or he's deliberately trying to ignore it, is that those 13 CRs were the product of bipartisan negotiation, of serious conversation. We had to make changes in those bills when our Republican colleagues suggested it. They were in the minority, but they had a right to be heard, a right that has been completely shut out for Democrats under this new Republican majority. It's a new way of doing things, and it's led to the Trump shutdown, aided and abetted by Senate Republicans. Leader Thune talks about hostages. Yeah, the truth is the hostages are the American people that the Republican majority and Trump are holding hostage because they won't help them with health care. Americans are demanding we do something. We address this health care crisis. In terms of extending the ACA tax credits, 90% of Americans want them extended. 58% of Trump voters want them extended. And that's who's being held hostage by the Republican majority. Those are the unfortunate hostages, the American people, and the crisis they face with health care. The ACA crisis is looming over everyone's head. And yet Republicans seem ready to let people's premiums spike by tens of thousands. That's who the hostages are, the American people who need health care relief, who are demanding health care relief. And I'll remind my Republican colleagues, open enrollment is in 2 weeks. It means in 2 weeks, tens of millions of Americans are going to have to make life-changing decisions. Imagine getting a notice that your insurance is going to go up $15,000 each year, as so many of my constituents and people across America are getting, and having to make the awful, awful decision whether to have health care or not, and then think, what if my kid gets sick and I won't have health care? But what do? I can't afford $5,000 or $10,000 more a year. That's the position Republicans are putting the American people in. That's the position Donald Trump is putting the American people in. And I don't know if Republicans don't comprehend it. I think they do. Even when we went to the Oval Office, it seemed when Leader Jeffries and I told President Trump about it, he was just beginning to understand the depth of the crisis. But they either don't understand it or they're brutally callous. So interested in tax cuts for the very wealthy that they're willing to just savage health care for the American people. And then a few Republicans, if they want to act on health care at all, many of them don't want to do anything, particularly in the House, where they seem to hold Speaker Johnson in a frightened situation. He's so afraid to do anything about health care because his right wing will attack him. But for those who want to act on health care, they think we can wait till the very, very last minute. But the reality is it'll be far too late for the American people. And many of them will be stuck paying outrageous amounts of money. The vast majority of Americans who have health care, who have ACA health care and other health care, are going to have to make their decisions by November 1st, not January 1st. Yet, despite this crisis, despite the enormity of the increase in costs that Americans will have to pay for their health care, Republicans continue to dig in. They continue to say, we don't want to help on health care. We don't want to negotiate with Democrats on health care. They say there's nothing to negotiate. That's got to change soon. Has to, for the sake of the American people. Democrats want to reopen the government as soon as possible so people can get back to work, so government services are not interrupted. But we need to fix the ACA premiums right now. If Republicans fail to act now to lower premiums, the American people will correctly, wish it didn't have to happen, wish we could solve this, but they'll have to hold them. The American people will have to hold Republicans responsible when they face financial ruin. Now on the No Kings rallies. In a few days, millions of Americans in cities, towns, villages, rural areas across the country will exercise one of the most fundamental rights under the Constitution, one of the greatest things about America, exercising the right to peacefully protest, exercising the right to free speech. This weekend's No King rallies will be an affirmation about what America is all about. We are a democracy in America. We have no kings, despite the fact that Trump has even said he wants to become one and is acting in ways that are a threat to our democracy. In America, we do not have dictators, and we cannot allow presidents to transform the presidency into some form of dictatorship. And now more than ever, for that reason, it is vital Americans from one end of the country to the other stand up for our basic freedoms, because Donald Trump is eroding our democracy day by day by day. So this weekend, I encourage Americans everywhere, Americans who love this country, who care about our democracy. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican or independent, a liberal or a moderate or conservative. The vast majority of Americans want to preserve this democracy. And the No Kings rally says that in a very strong way, where millions of Americans, millions, will come together to say just that we don't want kings in America. I will join the marchers to celebrate what makes this country so great. And I say to my fellow citizens, do not let Donald Trump or Republicans intimidate you into silence. That's what they want to do. They're afraid of the truth. Republicans are going apoplectic because Americans are exercising their right to free speech. Even though, even some of them, too many of them, know that Donald Trump is threatening our democracy, and the American people are seeing just that. And that is the theme, the very appropriate theme of this weekend's rallies. No kings. No kings. So I urge Americans, speak out, use your voice, exercise your rights to free speech. And of course, there should be no violence from either side. I say to Americans, show the world how much we love this country, how much we love our values, how much we love our democracy and want to preserve it. And don't be afraid. Trump and the Republicans want you to be afraid. They don't like free speech when it's free speech they don't want to hear. But we're not going to let them intimidate us. For weeks, Republicans have tried to vilify these rallies. They call them the most ridiculous of terms, hate America rallies. These are love America rallies. They call them terrorist rallies. That's just despicable. They're trying to scare people away from their basic right to free speech, but we will not be intimidated. These are not hate rallies, as some of the right-wingers try to say. These are Save America rallies, Love America rallies, Care About America rallies. Not only is this a right to protest, which we all treasure or have treasured until recently, with this new administration seeming to not want rights to protest or even free speech when they don't agree with it.
Thank you very much.
This is the right thing to do.
This is very exciting.
A necessity when Donald Trump weaponizes the Justice Department
we just had a
to
call,
become his attack dog and go after his political enemies.
Call, so we'll talk
when he
about it
attacks
later.
the courts,
but it went very well.
when he
We're here today to announce a historic victory for American women, mothers, and families. With the actions I will outline this afternoon, will dramatically slash the cost of IVF and the treatment and many of the most common fertility drugs for countless millions of Americans. Prices are is the Senior Vice President of Fertility of EMD, Serrano. So I want to thank you. Let's see here. That's what I thought. I thought it was you. Thank you, Libby, very much. And let me also thank the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy, Jr., whose wife destroyed the people on The View yesterday. I have to say that. I'm not going to ever get into an argument with her. And you've decided, you learned that a long time ago, right? She did a great job, actually. Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick. Thank you, Howard. Secretary of Labor, Lori Chavez de Rima. Thanks, Lori. Howard, thanks. CMS Administrator, Dr. Mehmet Oz, who's a fantastic guy, and he's done really well. FDA Commissioner Marty McCary. Thank you, Marty. Senator Katie Britt, who got me started with this whole thing when she called up to say there was a bad ruling by a judge, right? We got to do something, sir, and we did it very quickly. Probably in 24 hours it was done. Congressman Richard Hudson, a great guy, and his wife Renee. Richard, hi, Richard. And Advocate Samantha Bush, who's a very respected person. For years, American couples struggling with infertility have faced crushing costs in their quest to start a family, and IVF is among the most expensive treatments of all. A single round of IVF in the United States can cost up to $25,000, can actually go a lot higher than that, and many couples require multiple rounds for a successful pregnancy. A major reason for these high prices is the excessive cost of the drugs involved. The number one fertility drug used in IVF is currently 700% more expensive in the United States than the rest of the world. And you know, we're ending all of that. It's called favored nations, and we're ending it, and we're ending it pretty fast. Nobody thought we'd be able to do it, and we've done it. Drugs are going to come down. Drug prices are coming down. 400%, 200%, 600%, numbers that nobody's ever seen before. Great for Medicare, Medicaid, even Social Security. Great for everything, I think, Dr. Oz. So that's something that's, to me, it's very exciting. I'm bugging him and Bobby all the time. How are we doing with that? And we're doing really good, Bobby. Right? It's really going good. Other countries are agreeing to it, because if they don't, we put tariffs on them. And then they agree, so it's amazing. It's amazing how that worked out. But as an example, in London, you'd buy a certain drug for $130, and even less than that, I guess, $88 as of a count a month ago. And in New York, you pay $1,300 for the same thing. So now we're going to be paying, instead of $1,300, you'll be paying about $150. And they'll be paying $150 too. We're going to pay the same thing. Favored nations. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. And we've been ripped off by the whole world for a long period of time. One of the most popular fertility drug regimens costs over $5,000 per cycle, as an example. Wow. Largely as a result of these unsustainable prices, 70% of the employers do not offer insurance that covers IVF. Therefore, most couples with fertility challenges are paying these costs entirely out of their own pockets, which is not really possible to do. Oh, look who we have. Look at that, the great Maria Bartiromo. I didn't know, did you get put into the regular pool pack? That's very good. Yeah, that's good. Nice to see you. I'm doing an interview with her in a little while. In the Trump administration, we want to make it easier for all couples to have babies, raise children, and start the families they've always dreamed about. That's why today I'm pleased to announce that after extensive negotiations, EMD Serono, the largest fertility drug manufacturer in the world, has agreed to provide massive discounts to all fertility drugs they sell in the United States, including the most popular drug of all, the IVF drug Gonal-F. So it's Gonal-F. Is that a proper pronunciation? Close enough, right? Gonal-F. As part of this agreement, EMD Serono will list their fertility drugs online at trumprx.gov at very, very heavily reduced prices, prices that you won't even believe. And ultimately, that's because of the favored nations. In addition, the FDA will be working with the company to expedite review and approval of another common fertility IVF drug, and currently it's selling in Europe. It's Pergoveris. And that's a sounding nice name. Pergoveris. Why can't you name them nice, simple names? Nice, easy names. Doesn't matter. If it works, that's all we care about, right? Upon approval, this drug would directly compete against a much more expensive option that currently has a monopoly in the American market, and this will bring down costs very significantly, and the other one's going to have to come down also. Finally, EMD Serrano has agreed that all future drugs and everything that it develops and sells in the United States will be offset at most favored nation prices. I've been after this for a long time, and we started the process in the last administration, and then we had a little thing called COVID that came up. We had to focus on that, did a good job on that too. And they'll bring a significant portion of their drug manufacturing back to the United States. So they're going to bring it largely back into the United States, and that's for a lot of reasons, but primarily because of the election result, November 5th, and maybe most importantly because of the tariffs, because if they do it here, there are no tariffs. So we're going to be very close, I think by the end of this year, we're going to be very close to $20 trillion in investment. As an example, the Biden administration had less than $1 trillion, substantially less than $1 trillion for 4 years, Maria. Can you imagine? 4 years, less than one. We're going to break $20 trillion of investment, and we're already over $17 trillion, and that's in 8 months. Can you believe that? And he was at less than $1 trillion. And in addition to that, he had open borders, allowing millions of people to pour in. What an administration that was. Worst president in history, by far. As a result of these actions, the per-cycle cost of drugs used in IVF will fall by an estimated 73% for American consumers, and the numbers are going to actually be very substantially higher as time goes by when it really kicks in. For most of, I mean, think of those numbers. You know, I told the story last time because we were with Pfizer, and Pfizer's doing something very similar. But I told them that my first term, I was so proud of myself because I was the first president in 28 years where drug prices went down for the year. And you know what they went down? 1/8 of 1%. But I was so 1/8 of 1%. Now I'm getting them down, Maria, 500, 600, 800%. In some cases, even more than that. It's hard to believe. But I was proud. I said, oh, wow, I'm the first one. 1/8 of 1%. And I was proud of that. Now I realized, and I called a news conference. Some of you were at that news conference, actually. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, congratulations. We've gone down by 1/8 of 1%. And now we're going down 500, 600, 700, 800%, Richard. So it's really something. For most administrations and all of the people involved in this kind of thing, this action would be a crowning achievement of their agenda for fertility health. But for us, it's really just the beginning. It's just a start. It's one of many things we're doing. Today, we're also taking historic steps to vastly expand access to insurance coverage for fertility care, including IVF, something that, as you know, was not covered. Effective immediately, for the first time ever, we will make it legal for companies to offer supplemental insurance plans specifically for fertility. That's never been done before. We're signing it in today with what we sign. Americans will be able to opt in to specialized coverage just as they get vision and dental insurance. They're going to get fertility insurance for the first time. So I don't know. I don't know how well these things are covered. I see the Democrats like to take credit for all of the things we do. We do the things and they take the credit. But I figure if you do enough of these, eventually people are going to figure it out. The Democrats have done nothing. This will make all fertility care, including IVF, far more affordable and accessible. And by providing coverage at every step of the way, it will reduce the number of people who ultimately need to resort to IVF because couples will be able to identify and address problems early. The result will be healthier pregnancies, healthier babies, and many more beautiful American children. It's a big factor. It's a big deal. I'm asking all employers to make these new fertility benefit options available to their employees immediately. The initiatives I've just announced are the boldest and most significant actions ever taken by any president to bring the miracle of life into more American homes. And I will say Katie was great. As you know, she's a great senator from Alabama. She's the first one that told me about this. I had not known too much about it, and we worked very rapidly together, didn't we, though?
Mr. President, you
We had everything passed, and Alabama then took care of it and passed it. Within a week, everything was done. Really, it was something. So I want to thank Katie, Brett. There's no deeper happiness and joy of raising children, and now millions of Americans struggling with infertility will have a new chance to share the greatest experience of them all. So I'd like to thank all of the people that are here, and I think we'll start with Dr. Oz and Ms. Thorne. We'll go through the list and we'll listen. And yesterday I did this, and I stood for about an hour and a half as people spoke. And I said, this time I'm sitting right there, and I'm going to watch you. I stood for an hour and a half like this. I said, you got to be kidding. Here we go. It was one after another, and it was wonderful listening to them. But I said, if I have to do this every day, Bobby, should I stand or sit? Thank you, Bobby. Please, Dr. Oz.
Okay. Mr. President, I'm going to jump in here real quick. I want to start by thanking President Trump. Sir, from the very first phone call we ever had, your support was strong. It was steadfast. It was unwavering. And because of you, millions of Americans are going to have a greater opportunity to bring the greatest gift, in my opinion, life into this world. Your support, your administration's support, it's a game changer. All of us here today are aligned. This is a celebration of life. It's a celebration of parents. It's a celebration of families. And it's a celebration for those people who want to one day be parents themselves. I think every parent can attest, and I certainly do myself, that the greatest gift that God has ever given me is the ability to be a mom. We want more people to have that opportunity. We want to make that easier and more affordable. IVF is what makes the difference for so many families that are facing infertility. So you've seen the numbers. It's either 1 in 8 couples, or some people say as much as 1 in 6, are actually experiencing issues with fertility. It's 9% of males and at least 11% of females that are facing these challenges as they work to build their family. The recommendations today that President Trump has set forth are going to expand IVF coverage to nearly 1 million more families, and they're going to drive down cost significantly. Mr. President, this is the most pro-IVF thing that any president in the history of the United States of America has done. And Mr. President, it's your leadership. You are the reason why the Republican Party is now the party of parents. We are the party of families. This is why when Senator Cruz and I worked last year, we got every single Republican senator to sign on and say that they supported nationwide access to IVF. And just for the record, IVF is legal and accessible in all 50 states. And President Trump taking this action today to lower cost, to bring these issues to the forefront, and to enact solutions for people working to start their families, I want you to know it's significant and there's more to come. But this isn't the only thing that you've done to prove that we're the party of parents and we're the party of families. If you look at the working family tax cut, guys, he made sure that hard-working parents were front and center in that legislation. You know, whether it was child tax credits being expanded and made permanent, whether it was Trump accounts that are going to change the game for so many parents, or whether it was childcare. So for decades, we have heard Democrats talk about childcare. President Trump actually took action on the affordability and accessibility of childcare. We know that 1 in 4 families say that they hesitate to have more children because of the cost and because of childcare cost. For the first time, This man actually took steps to change the dynamics for hardworking parents. So of the 3 tax credits that he reformed and the working families tax cuts, 2 of them had not been touched in 2 decades, and 1 of them had not been touched since 1986. So President Reagan was in office the last time anybody did anything about it. But you changed the game on that, and I was proud to lead that effort in the Senate. And so on behalf of moms and dads, on behalf of grandparents and sisters and aunts and uncles and brothers and people who are looking to expand their family, we say thank you. Thank you for all you do to support families in this country and make a healthier environment and an easier one for us to grow the very most important thing. God bless.
So let's set the stage. To put it in perspective, 2 weeks ago, as President Trump alluded, a leading U.S. drug manufacturer came into this room and agreed to do something none of us thought was possible, a most favored nation agreement with numbers, again, inconceivable. Last week, a company from Europe, a global leader in the pharmaceutical sector, came to this office, made the same kind of commitment for most favored nation pricing, again, because the president insisted on it and was persistent, and he alluded to the fact that he was calling Secretary Kennedy and me quite a bit. He definitely was, with great insights into the process and would not hold back. But I think what you're seeing today is something even larger. It's larger because we're now showing that MFN is a tool that can get other initiatives going as well. We are revealing perhaps the most important MFN opportunity at all because it's about procreation. It's about babies. It turns out that MFN is a tool for a lot of things, and it goes without saying that you get the drug pricing down, but lots of other business necessities become possible when that occurs. So Secretary Kennedy and I, who's a wonderful leader, talk frequently about family. I think the reason he's a great leader, and president as well, is because they have large families and they take pride in the joy that it gives us. But many families, as Senator Britt alluded, do not have the ability to have children. But it turns out that it's about 1 in 3 families, a much higher number, that don't have the number of babies they desire. They're under-babied. So this president committed to address that during the campaign, and he is delivering on that today in a way I don't think anyone thought was possible. We are opening the door with MFN pricing and tariffs that support it, Secretary Lutnick, with a new approach to make reproductive medicine more affordable for Americans. Now, I know what you're all thinking, and you're probably right. There are going to be a lot of Trump babies. I think that's probably a good thing. But it turns out the fundamental creative force in society is about making babies. It's about creating. And this country, the one that President Trump is leading so beautifully, has been a country of abundance, not scarcity. To have abundance, you have to address the fact that we had 3.6 million babies last year, which is beautiful, 3.6 million miracles. That's 500,000 less babies than we would ideally have had, even to replace our current population. Building on the success of the last 2 weeks, our team, led by the head of Medicare, Chris Klump, who's standing over there, and Ina Hernandez, have negotiated a spectacular MFN deal to reduce the cost of IVF drug prices by $2,200 a cycle. That's nearly half of the price that it had been. The most prescribed drug in this category in America, made by MD Serrano, is described over here. And you'll notice, President Trump, these are discounted from $242 to $10. I don't know what the math is on that. We can't even calculate it. It's a lot. It's too high to calculate without a more studied approach. But I give it up there because that number of $10 will apply for every American who earns less than $115,000 a year. That's 70% of the American people. The remaining folks who are able to make more will have to pay a tiny bit more, but it's still most favored nation pricing, no different from what the Europeans are willing to pay. Now, to make this deal happen, Chris and Inma had to do something special. They had to actually not just get the drug price down, but get the middlemen to let it go as well. And Mr. President, we've met with the middlemen in the past. They're now joining the MFN movement. I want to thank Express Scripts Freedom Pharmacy and then CVS's Specialty Pharmacy because they were willing to stand up and do the right thing for the American people by answering the president's call and slashing their prices. Now, this announcement also encompasses a remarkable move from Marty Makary. And Marty Makary is, of course, the leader of the FDA, but he has ongoing efforts to accelerate their approval of innovative medicines that will further reduce the price and make this whole process more seamless for the American people. Now, you're about to hear about a spectacular new program that's been alluded to, but one of the architects of that program, Heidi Overton, Deputy Director of the White House Domestic Policy Council, is going to take us through the exciting details of what this is going to offer for the American people, especially those who are in the workforce. But first, we think you should hear from Libby Horn. Libby is EMD Serrano's head of fertility. She brings both professional expertise and a personal connection to this work. She has 3 beautiful daughters, and she has personally benefited from reproductive medicine that has shaped her family, and her company made today's spectacular MFM pricing possible. Libby.
Thank you, Dr. Oz. Thank you, Mr. President. Today, we gather on this national stage to celebrate a historic step forward in expanding access to fertility treatments for those who need it most. Mr. President, thanks to your leadership and the tireless efforts of your team, this is a momentous day for Americans who struggle but remain hopeful to build their families. Infertility is on the rise in our country. 1 in 8 couples face infertility. This isn't just a number, it's real lives, dreams, and aspirations of hardworking Americans. The teacher who goes to school each day, surrounded by children, but aching for children of her own. The firefighter who puts his life on the line, but can't create the life he wants at home. The consequences of these challenges can take significant tolls. Some of you watching today have given up or are frustrated because access to IVF treatments has been out of reach. That's why expanding access to IVF has been an issue of great importance to the President. He made this clear in his executive order declaring the administration's goal of supporting American families by enabling access and eliminating barriers to IVF. Today, EMD Serrano is proud to help President Trump deliver on his promise to you. Thanks to the President's leadership, EMD Serrano has worked alongside distributors and other partners to help more families have access to services and innovations that are consistent with other countries. Through our partnership with the administration, we are proud to announce that Americans will have access to our leading IVF therapies for an 84% discount off list prices. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. Thank you for making this possible.
Thank you very much. It's great. Fantastic.
For more than 40 years, EMD Serrano has been a global leader in fertility. Our science was instrumental in the birth of the first IVF baby in the US, and we've helped to bring more than 6 million babies into the world since then. Our purpose is to help create, improve, and prolong life. That means discovering more medicines and bringing them to patients faster. FDA Commissioner Makary has made it a priority to ensure that Americans have access to the world's most innovative treatments as quickly as possible. To that end, EMD Serrano is filing a new IVF therapy called Pergoveris for review under the FDA Commissioner's National Priority Voucher Program. If approved, Pergoveris would combine 2 key reproductive hormones in synergy designed to mimic reproductive physiology. This therapeutic option could mean fewer injections, fewer copays, and lower self-pay cost, all of which make a real difference in the IVF patient experience. In closing, on behalf of EMD Serrano, I want to send my heartfelt thanks to President Trump and the entire administration for their leadership and vision in this critical area of healthcare. Together, we will make a difference in the lives of countless families across this nation and uphold our long-standing legacy of creating life. Thank you.
Mr. President, thank you for your bold leadership that's allowed our teams to go far beyond what anyone thought was possible. On behalf of the Domestic Policy Council and Vince Haley here, we would like to also thank all the agency partners and the stakeholders that we worked with to get to the solution today that will make a real impact for families. Specifically, today's historic actions, 4 in total that you see, are made possible by coordination of all of the White House team and 7 agencies, many of who are represented here, and their teams that have worked tirelessly. As you described, Mr. President, the current system isn't working. 7 in 10 Americans don't have coverage to IVF. They face high costs and uncertain outcomes. And there's intense demand for fertility benefits. 65% of Americans say that they would leave their current job just because of fertility benefits. So you asked us to lower costs and to fix the broken incentives in healthcare. In addition to lowering the cost of drugs by 73% or $2,200 per cycle, which if you missed it, most people require 2 or 3 cycles. So that's significant savings for families. I'm also going to briefly outline the new solution for coverage. This is a new fertility benefit option that employers can immediately offer to their employees starting today. This afternoon, the Departments of Labor, Health and Human Services, and Treasury will be releasing guidance that, for the first time, creates a legal pathway for employers to offer fertility benefit packages to people that need them, similar to how dental, vision, and life insurance are currently offered. This will be followed up by a regulation. These benefits can address the continuum of fertility needs, from the root causes of IVF, which Secretary Kennedy is working on very hard at HHS, to it'll be a coordinated package that does not exist in traditional health insurance today. It'll make it easier for employers, including small and mid-sized employers, to compete for talented employees. Currently, many small businesses cannot afford to offer fertility benefits at all. This is making it possible for them to offer benefits the same way that large companies like Amazon and others offer benefits. This is a pro-family benefit expansion that will transform clinical outcomes by addressing fragmented coverage and care. I'm a physician by training, and it's very important that we have high-quality care. Fertility benefit companies are poised to offer packages that have reported so far roughly 25% higher live birth rates for those that seek care compared to those that don't have such benefits. They also report fewer cycles to achieve pregnancy, improved natural pregnancy rates through better care before you need IVF, and reduced chance of miscarriages, a 21% reduction in miscarriage rate. Leading physicians in the field have also relayed that these types of benefits significantly improve the patient and doctor experience, allowing both to focus on care rather than navigating the bureaucracy. These impacts are very personal. Here with us today are my good friends, Congressman Richard Hudson of North Carolina and his wife, Renee Hudson. Both have worked in public service for years, including Renee for all 4 years of your past administration, Mr. President, and they struggled with infertility. Today they have a beautiful son who's their pride and joy. He's an amazing boy, but they also suffered multiple losses throughout their fertility journey, something that is very common. Unfortunately, too many people go through the hard, arduous process of IVF and still result in a miscarriage. So today, your option is not only saving money, it's going to improve the quality of care significantly. This new benefit option simultaneously represents the greatest opportunity to expand coverage of IVF that the federal government has ever taken, while also improving the care delivered. Additionally, and very importantly, it gives employers maximum flexibility to design benefits that are consistent with their values. Put simply, this new fertility benefit option means lower costs and more healthy babies. So today, this announcement, we are realigning the industry towards the simple metric of more healthy babies at lower costs. I would now like to introduce Samantha Bush, the wife of NASCAR driver Kyle Busch, who's been a leading advocate for IVF access and affordability after your own infertility journey. Thank you, Mr. President.
Hello, everyone. My husband, Kyle, and I battled infertility for over a decade before being blessed with our 2 beautiful children, Brexton, who's 10, and our daughter, Lennox, who's now 3. But our journey was long and painful. We faced 6 rounds of IVF, multiple miscarriages, multiple failed cycles, and countless moments of heartbreak. We faced the roller coaster of hope and devastation that so many families know all too well. Through it all, we held on to faith, each other, and the belief that somehow, someday, God would turn our pain into purpose. We also saw firsthand the staggering financial burden that comes with infertility treatments. Sitting in the waiting room of our fertility clinic, we overheard another couple quietly say that money was the only thing standing in their way of having their family. In that moment, Kyle and I looked at each other, and we knew God was planting a seed in our hearts, a calling to take action. In 2015, that calling became the Bundle of Joy Fund, a nonprofit foundation dedicated to providing financial assistance to couples struggling with infertility. What began as a small act of faith has now grown into something far greater than we could have ever imagined. To date, we've granted over $2 million directly to individuals, helping them pay for their IVF treatments, and we've celebrated the birth of 108 beautiful babies through our fund. Thank you. Each baby is a living, breathing testament to hope, community, and God's grace. For every tear we cried, for every shot we gave, every doctor's appointment that ended in disappointment, Kyle and I knew there had to be a greater reason. This was God's plan for us, to use our journey to advocate, empower, and be the voice to those battling in silence. Over the past 12 years, we've worked hard to raise awareness, erase stigma, and bring hope to the 1 in 6 couples that will face infertility. Infertility can be incredibly isolating. It can leave you questioning your faith, your body, and your future. But it can also reveal a strength that you never knew you had inside of you. It can deepen love, it can bring couples closer together, and it unites people through a shared struggle. Our goal has always been to show others that they are not alone, that there is a powerful community of infertility warriors behind them. Today, seeing President Trump acknowledge infertility on a national stage is profoundly moving. It's no longer a whispered conversation behind closed doors. It is a recognized, validated struggle that so many families have to endure. His leadership reminds us that those in positions of power can make real and lasting changes for generations to come. Their willingness to bring this issue forward shows that they not only hear our community, but they truly care about us. Thank you, Mr. President, and to your family, for shining a light on infertility and for standing by couples like Kyle and I, for standing by couples who only want to hear the words mommy and daddy, who want to watch our children open their Christmas presents on Christmas morning, who want to see the world anew through the joy in their kids' eyes. Your acknowledgement honors the power of family, faith, and love, the very values that make America the greatest country in the world. It's proof that when promises are made and promises are kept, lives are changed forever. Thank you, Mr. President.
Anybody else? Howard, would you like to say a couple of words? I was hoping you would say that. Thank you very much. Bobby, come on up for a second. What a job you're doing. Yeah, say a few words, Bobby.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for your vision, your commitment to our country. When my uncle was president, the fertility rate in this country was 3.5%. Today, it is 1.6%. The replacement rate, in other words, the amount of fertility that you need in order to keep your population even, is 2.1%. We are below replacement right now. That is a national security threat to our country. And we know why this is happening. And President Trump is addressing the root causes through his MAHA agenda of reducing endocrine disruptors, the exposure to chemicals that decrease fertility. Today, the average teenager in this country has 50% of the sperm count, 50% of the testosterone as a 65-year-old man. Our girls are hitting puberty 6 years earlier. And that's bad, but also our parents aren't having children. Parents who want to have children do not have access. I have 7 children. I feel that God has blessed me with that, and I can't imagine how different my life would be if I did not have that blessing. I want to point out also that this morning, Harvard University released a study that showed that the obesity rates have now climbed over 70%. And this, again, is for the same reason we're flooding our kids. We're poisoning mass poisoning a generation of kids with chemicals. President Trump has instructed us to stop these problems at the root cause. He's also recognized that there are people who are injured, people who are not living their life to the fullest, and he's addressing that. Last week, we made GLP drugs available at Most Favored Nation. And this week, it's IVF. I want to thank you so much for that, Mr. President. I saw on an airplane the other day, you said that you didn't believe that you were going to get to heaven. You're doing God's work here. You've made peace in the Middle East, which is beyond anybody's imagination. And now you're giving millions of Americans a chance to have babies. And you're doing this while the government is locked down by the Democrats. But this administration has not stopped working for the American people. And that's because of your energy, your commitment, your vision, and I want to thank you for allowing me to be part of it.
And he's doing a great job. And by the way, Kyle is fantastic. So he's got a lot of courage. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't care. Howard, you and I would not be good at that. Right? We'd go about 30 miles an hour, but we'd be safe. Anyway, so thank you very much. Any questions, please?
Mr. President.
Yeah, please.
Mr. President, this is a major campaign promise that you made. It was a big hot topic towards the end of the election. You're delivering on that again. I actually had a question for Secretary Kennedy or Dr. Heidi. Dr. Heidi, you said something that I thought was really important. You talked about how this coverage option, this benefit option, gives companies the maximum flexibility to design benefits consistent to their values. I was wondering if either you or the President could expand on that and talk about why that's an important thing to understand about this program.
Yes. Thank you. It's a great question. We think that employers are best situated to know what them and their employees want to contribute to in relation to their benefits. So employers are going to be able to decide how to cover the root causes of infertility, things like obesity, metabolic health, and other things that are impacting infertility. And also, if they want to encourage their employees to see certain types of doctors, and they can work with providers that are identifying the highest quality fertility providers. And so it puts them in the driver's seat, and our view is that we want employers to be the ones that can make those decisions, not the government. Thank you.
All right. That's a good answer. That was a very good answer. Yeah, please,
Mr.
go ahead.
Mr. President, previously you did not seem to be bothered regarding Hamas cracking down on what you called gangs. Actually,
what?
A couple of gangs. And today you issued a threat against Hamas on Truth Social. What has changed?
And what was said? Go ahead.
You said if they continue keep killing innocents in Gaza, that if that continues, the United States will
I know.
go
I
after
issued a
them.
strong statement. That's right.
But they used to be gangs, and now you're saying innocents. What made you think they're innocents now?
Well, I'm looking at what's happening, and that wasn't the deal that was made, and we'll see what happens. It's calmed down. It's a tough neighborhood. We know that. We have a commitment from them, and I assume they're going to honor that commitment. I hope they do. And I understand they brought back some additional bodies today. It's a rough deal when you think of it, right? Very rough. We have our hostages back completely. We were very lucky with that. But it's a tough situation. They brought back bodies today, as you probably know. But they also said they're going to behave. We're going to find out if they behave. If they behave good, if they don't behave, we'll take care of it. Yeah, please.
Following up on that,
I didn't say you. Your CNN fake news. Go ahead.
You said in your post that if they kept killing people in Gaza, we would have no choice but to go in and kill them. So do you mean U.S. forces would go in and take out Hamas?
No, I didn't say who would go in, but somebody will go in. It's not going to be us. We won't have to. There are people very close, very nearby that will go in. They'll do the trick very easily, but under our auspices.
Could I follow up? You also posted about your call with President Putin today, and you spoke about a meeting in Hungary with him. Do you have a timeline or a date set for when?
Yeah, I would say within 2 weeks or so, pretty quick. Marco Rubio is going to be meeting with his counterpart, as you know, Lavrov. and they'll be meeting pretty soon. They're going to set up a time and a place very shortly. Maybe it's already set up. They've already spoken. And I thought it was a very good phone call. I thought very productive. But I'll be meeting with President Putin, and we'll make a determination. Tomorrow I'm meeting with President Zelensky, and I'll be telling him about the call. I mean, we have a problem. They don't get along too well, those two, and it's sometimes tough to have meetings, so we may do something where we're separate but equal. We'll meet and talk parties, but this is a terrible relationship the two of them have, and it's one of those things. I've seen things that nobody would believe, but this is one of them. So we're going to be meeting in Hungary. Viktor Orban is going to be hosting, and it's really something that's time. Last week, over 7,000 people were killed. That's ridiculous. And you know, it doesn't affect our country. We're not losing people. We're not losing Bobby. We're not losing Americans, but they're losing Russians, Ukrainians, mostly soldiers, for the most part, soldiers. And we hope we're going to get it stopped. I thought this would be, because of my relationship with President Putin, I thought this would be very quick. And it's turned out to be, who would think I did Middle East before I did this? We did a total of 8 now, 7 and now 8. And we're going to make this number 9.
Yeah, please. Sir, you said you posted that there was great progress. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Was it a shift in Putin's tone? Was it something new he told you? Did he give you any message to give?
You're talking about the whole
President Zelensky tomorrow.
It just seems to me that, look, it's only a field. That's all I've done in my whole life. I've made deals. I know about deals. I do it well. I don't think any president's ever ended a war, frankly. One war, I did 8 of them, Maria, right? And but I don't know, did Bush ever end? Do you think Biden ended a war? Biden started wars because he was stupid. But do you think Biden ended any wars? No, I don't know of anybody that ended wars. I ended 8 of them. Now it's going to be 9. I think we're going to have this one done hopefully soon. But I'll be meeting him probably over the next 2 weeks. First, Marco is going to be meeting. And the vice president, as you know, is very much involved. The whole team is involved. Steve Witkoff will be involved. Yeah, please.
What did you tell them about the Tomahawks? Did you discuss the Tomahawk missiles? Did you discuss?
Well, we talked about it a little bit. Didn't say much, but I do say to you, we need Tomahawks for the United States of America too. We have a lot of them, but we need them. I mean, we can't deplete for our country. So they're very vital. They're very powerful. They're very accurate. They're very good, but we need them too. So. I don't know what we can do about that.
Why do you think a second meeting with Putin? Why do you think a second meeting with Putin now will yield different results?
Well, I think Alaska actually set a stage, and that wasn't very long ago, but it set a stage. You have to understand, I came into this situation. I didn't start this war. This is a Biden deal, and I came into it, and it was a mess. It could have led to World War III. In my opinion, this could have led to World War III. That won't happen, but it could have. So I came in, this war was raging. When I left, this wasn't even a thought. For 4 years, nobody talked about it. I spoke to President Putin about Ukraine. It was the apple of his eye, but there was never going to be doing anything like this. And this all went because of some really bad decisions that were made. And look what you have. You have millions of people dead. You have just a horrible, horrible situation. I'm doing it to save souls. That's all I'm doing it for. I'm not doing it for us. We have an ocean between us. I'm doing it also to help Europe. They want to have it ended, but they're unable to do it. I'm able to do it. So I think we'll be successful. We'll save a lot of lives. It should have been done. Should have never started. This would have never happened if the election weren't rigged. This would have never happened. But it did happen, and I'll get it stopped. Okay.
What's your message to
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you mentioned a $1,300 drug at the top of this. Were you referring to the weight loss drugs?
Yeah, I was referring to Ozempic, or I was referring the fat loss drug.
So those are going to be $150 out of pocket
Yeah,
for
well,
Americans.
they'll be much lower. They'll be much lower. Yeah, go ahead, please.
We have not negotiated those yet. We're going to be rolling these out over time. The GLP category of drugs, which includes Ozempic, have not been negotiated yet.
What's the timeline for that?
But it will. It'll come like everyone else.
Okay. Any timeline on on those negotiations?
No, but I think those are going to come down pretty fast, and we do have, I guess, some alternative.
The president will be happy with the result, and until he is, we're not going to close those negotiations. Thank you.
Except it'll happen.
Got it.
Mr. President, what's your message to pro-life conservatives? Some pro-life conservatives have religious objections to IVF and are already critical of this policy. What's your message to them?
I don't know about the views of that. I'm just looking to do something because, you know, pro-life, I think this is very pro-life. You can't get more pro-life than this. Please.
Mr. President, you've been talking about how this new benefit plan will also include root cause treatments for infertility. How will you make sure that those root cause treatments are equally accessible to IVF?
Well, I think we're going to be doing that. Would anybody like to talk about that subject?
I'll comment
Please.
on the rulemaking process. I think it's the determination, again, Secretary of Labor, the determination, the Department of Labor is issuing their intent today to open up the rulemaking process, again, for more flexibility. Anytime that you have a president who's leading when you can offer more access to health care at a lower rate is a benefit to the American people and to the end user, and that's exactly what he's doing. And so you heard before that through the Q&A guidance that was issued today with the other agencies, that will give guidance to our employers and the employees about what the flexibility of that is, and then again, opening that rulemaking process for further determination of the access that can be offered in those benefits for all different types of health care access is the goal of the Department of Labor.
Good answer.
Thank you.
I like this better. I just say, they can do better than me. Yeah, please. Good job, Laura. You know, you're doing a fantastic job. I shouldn't tell, I won't say it, that I will not say that she was recommended by the Teamsters. Can you believe it? And she's turned out to be a gem, an absolute gem. You're doing a great job. Thank you very much.
Mr. President,
John Bolton was just indicted.
Do you think we can see your deal-making skills applied to the government shutdown anytime soon?
Well, look, I mean, all we want to do is just extend. We don't want anything. We just want to extend, live with the deal that they had. They want to spend $1.5 trillion on illegal immigrants, and they want to destroy health care for everyone else, and it's crazy. It's crazy. People that are here illegally, they want to spend $1.5 trillion. So we're just not going to do it. No, we have to take care of our health care. Now, we're doing that today, and we're doing it with, you know, favored nations, the most favored nations. Your costs are going to be dropping greatly. And I'm really happy that it's at the beginning of my administration, because I did insulin and got it down to like $25, but it doesn't kick in. It didn't kick in for 2 years by statute, so it couldn't kick in. And I said, boy, I hope I win this election, because if I don't, somebody else is going to take credit for it, Bobby. And sure as can be, Biden said, he didn't even know what the hell was happening, and it was a hard thing for me to do. I got insulin way down. What was it before that? It was just massive. It was impossible to afford. And sure as can be, because it was statute, it couldn't have been earlier. I said, boy, this falls into the next administration. I better win. And all of a sudden, I watch this Biden taking credit for something that I did. And on other things, too. We had a lot of things kick in. So the nice part about this is at the beginning of our administration, so I think we're going to see the fruits of our labor. And I hope on our other situation that we've talked so much about, autism, I hope we're going to see some very good results based on the recommendations that we made. And, you know, we have time to watch those results now.
John Bolton was just indicted by a grand jury in Maryland. Do you have a reaction to that?
I didn't know that. You tell me for the first time, but I think he's, you know, a bad person. I think he's a bad guy. Yeah, he's a bad guy. It's too bad, but it's the way it goes.
The case against him?
That's the way it goes, right? That's the way it goes. Will I what?
Have you reviewed the case against him?
No, I haven't. But I just think he's a bad person. Okay, anybody else?
What's the timeline for the IVF drug through the National Commissioner Priority Review Voucher? Dr. McCary?
What do you think, Doctor?
So, first of all, the National Priority Voucher Program says we're going to proactively at the FDA look for amazing treatments like this IVF treatment. We're going to reach out to the companies, and if it's in line with the president's national priorities, we're going to put those drugs at the front of the line and get a decision out in weeks instead of a year. And so today we announced 9 drugs that are going to be recipients. These are products where the manufacturing is going to be in the United States, or it's meeting a large unmet public health need, like a diabetes drug we announced today. or it is a product where you're going to see an affordability phenomena because the prices are getting equalized in line with the president's most favored nation status goal.
Wow, that's good. Why didn't I have him speak? He was so, could have saved a lot of time. Right? Thanks, Bonnie. I'm not surprised. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Chris. So Senate Majority Leader John Thune today said he'd like to proceed with the bill which would put sanctions on Russia. What's your thought on that?
Well, we're going to see. He doesn't know about the call yet. I'm going to speak to him later. And it was subject to what I wanted to do. And so we'll see what happens. We may have, this may be such a productive call that we're going to end up, we want to get peace. We want to stop the killing. 7,000 people a week. Can you believe it? We want to stop the killing. So I'm going to speak to him and the speaker, Mike Johnson. I'll speak to them a little bit later and I'll tell them about this. And we'll make the right determination. I'm not against anything. I'm just saying it may not be perfect timing. It could happen in a week or two, but it's at my option, as you know.
Right, but did President Putin try to dissuade you from selling Tomahawk missiles?
Well, of course. What do you think he's going to say? Please sell Tomahawks? Is he going to say, please sell those Tomahawks? I really appreciate it. I did actually say, would you mind if I gave a couple of thousand Tomahawks to your opposition? I did say that to him. I said it just that way. He didn't like the idea. He really didn't like the idea. No, I said it that way. You have to be a little bit lighthearted sometimes, but no, he doesn't want Tomahawk. Tomahawk is a vicious weapon. It's a vicious, offensive, incredibly destructive weapon. Nobody wants Tomahawk shot at them.
Specifically ask you not to provide Tomahawks?
So, wouldn't anybody? I mean, it's been in the news. Who wouldn't do that? CNN. Who wouldn't do that? You know, do you think he's going to say, I'd love to have Tomahawk sent my way? I don't think so. Maria, we have one of the great stars of television here, and she's an incredible person, and she's just an amazing woman who, she got it all right. She got the Russia hoax right. She got everything. Would you have a question?
Yes, Mr. President. I would ask you why this was so important to you, IVF, and why was autism so important to you? What are you trying to achieve?
Well, autism is like a whole different thing. When you look at, it was 1 in 20,000. Now it's 1 in 12. If you look, Bobby, we have different numbers, but 1 in 12, 1 in 28, 1 in 32. There's a couple of different numbers out there, but it's 1 in a very, very different number than it used to be. It used to be 1 in 20,000. And that was not that long ago, 20 years ago or so. And now they had something for boys, for babies, baby boys. It's 1 in 12. I heard 1 in 10, Bobby. I heard another one, you know, different lists. But when you think of that, it's not even sustainable, but there's something artificial. When that happens, that's not like a natural. And then you have certain groups of people that literally don't have autism, and they're not taking some of the things that we're taking. So we're working very hard. And on IVF, it's just that I have friends, including Katie, that called me and they told me the importance of it. I wasn't that familiar with it. Now I think I've sort of become the father ever since I heard. There was a bad decision in Alabama where a judge wanted all clinics to be immediately closed, right? And Katie called up and you said you were pretty strongly attacked by your friends that you didn't even know were involved with IVF, right?
You had people that had grandkids, people who'd gone through IVF themselves, telling their story. And
Yeah.
saying there are people that cope out there.
Tell what you did when you heard from your friends. You said this was not, they almost became violent, right?
Yeah, I told him, I said, Mr. President, we need you. We need your voice in this conversation. We need the directive. We need the strong support because there are millions of people out there, moms and dads, wanting to bring life into the world. And you had people, the chilling effect that occurred across Alabama, there were people that were in the middle of that process that had been praying to have a child, and that was halted. And so the reality of that was very stark in our state. And so I was able to tell the president some of the stories of people, you know, friends and grandparents and relatives that told me what they had experienced against, and also, what they were fearful of in the future. And the president very quickly acted, spoke with a strong voice, and really led the way. Obviously, we saw Democrats continue to fearmonger for the remainder of the year, trying to use it as an election issue when actually IVF is legal and accessible in all 50 states. And President Trump very clearly said where he was on this, and he said, I'm going to make sure that this is more accessible and that it is more affordable for families coast to coast. That's exactly what he did, but it's that real life, those real life stories, sir, that he responded to. And that's what people don't know about him. He cares. And when you tell him what American people are dealing with, he wants to do something about it. You have leaders and politicians that come before him that want to talk about things. President Trump wants to actually make things happen. That's exactly what he did here, and I'm so grateful, Mr. President.
Thank you, Katie, very much. Appreciate it. So we will go back to what we're doing. Working again with Marco and with JD and a few other people on the war, and we're doing a lot of other things also. The economy is unbelievable. It really is. It's been incredible. And I think one of the great numbers that I've ever heard, think of it, over $17 trillion being invested in our country. And when you think of, compare that to the last administration, but really compare it to any administration, compare it to any country. There's never been a country with anything like that. That's in a period of 8 months. And we've already broken every record possible. There's never anything even close. So we'll go back to all of that. Prices are down. Oil is down. We're down $58 a barrel. We're going to be hitting $2 for gasoline. I think we're going to be at $2. And the previous administration, they were at $4 and $5. They were going up much higher. And then they swung back into my things, but they didn't swing back properly. They were very, very late. They really blew it. We had it really going in the right direction. They came and took everything out, and it's incredible. I'll never forget. They lost control of the price of gasoline, of oil. They totally lost control, Howard, and then they went back immediately. Well, let's go back to Trump. But by that time, it was too late, and they didn't go back, because the leases and everything else, they didn't do what they had to do. They wouldn't know. They really didn't know how to. But we could be hitting close to $2 a gallon. I'd love to break it if we could, but we could be. And when that comes down, everything else has been coming down. Groceries are down. The price of things are down. And honestly, the simplicity is, if you can get oil down, it's such a big category. Everything follows. So just about everything follows. And we are working on beef, and I think we have a deal on beef that's going to bring the price of beef. That would be the one product that we would say is a little bit higher than we want it, maybe higher than we want it, and that's going to be coming down pretty soon too. We did something. We worked our magic. But groceries are down, and energy is down. Electricity is way down. We have the prices coming down for people. They were abused for 4 years by the Biden administration. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you soon. Thank you. Thank you.
Changes to the IRS.
Thank you, Press.
Candidates the free press and tries to tell networks they're going to lose their license. If they say things he doesn't agree with. When people are arrested and put in jail, American citizens, with no real cause and not even identification of who is making the arrest. I am so proud of Americans who will stand up peacefully. There's nothing more American than exercising the right to free speech, especially the right to dissent, especially when our democracy is at risk because of what Trump and his Republican cronies are trying to do. Remember the last No Kings rally. We saw millions of people, all backgrounds, all corners of the country, gathering peacefully. We saw American flags as far as the eye can see, and that's natural. The American flag stands for free speech. The American flag stands for the right for peacefully protest, even if Trump and his cronies don't even understand that or don't want to understand that. At these rallies, we saw people who love this country. We saw people who want to stand up for American values. We saw people who want to preserve our precious democracy. And that, sadly, is what many Republicans want to silence. We will not be silenced. Donald Trump and many Republicans in Congress are using intimidation, lies, bully tactics to prevent people from standing up, speaking out, exercising our precious constitutional rights. But I say again to every American out there who wants to participate in these weekend rallies, do not let Donald Trump or Republicans intimidate you into silence. That is what they want. That is how dictators evolve, when good people of all different beliefs and backgrounds stay silent. No King's Day says we will not stay silent. Do not, I say to the American people, do not be afraid to exercise your right to free speech. Be proud that you're doing it. Do not be afraid to peacefully protest against Donald Trump's eroding of our democracy, and do not be afraid to show how much you love this beautiful democracy, as the Founding Fathers called it, God's noble experiment. We have to keep this precious democracy. Now on the young Republicans, another sad chapter in how the Republican Party has devolved over the last few years. It's been 2 days since Politico published a horrifying story revealing thousands of private messages containing racist, sexist, and violent comments from prominent members of the Young Republicans organization. And yet, President Trump and the Republican leadership has remained silent. There's nothing but radio silence from Republican leaders who seem to claim they worry about combating political violent rhetoric. The silence from Republican leaders in the face of Hitler jokes and gas chamber jokes is deafening. Where are they? When they don't like somebody who says something on the left, they're the first to criticize them. Well, this is one of the nastiest, most vicious things that we have ever seen written by young Republicans, no less, and the Republican leadership, including President Trump, is silent. As I said, Republicans never miss a chance to preach about violent rhetoric when it comes from the other side, and of course that should be condemned. But now that it's coming from their own ranks, they're silent. Some Republicans seem to even excuse this vile behavior. This is amazing. The Vice President of the United States, no less, J.D. Vance, dismissed the messages as just a college group chat. Can you imagine if it was a group of people on the left saying some things, if he'd say the same thing? A college group chat? Does J.D. Vance really think glorifying Hitler and gas chambers is just a silly joke? Imagine if it came from the other side. We all know that Vance would be losing his mind right now. He'd be all over Fox News, decrying it. But now, since it's coming from his own ranks, he's just excusing it. Despicable, disgraceful, shameful. No matter if you're a Republican or Democrat in the middle, we all must condemn this nasty behavior and make it clear. This type of vicious rhetoric is unacceptable in America. And finally, on Gateway. On Gateway. Yesterday, President Trump and his administration terminated funding for Gateway. Gateway is the most important infrastructure project in America, period. It'll keep our economy moving, our region connecting, tens of thousands of union workers on the job. Donald Trump is trying to kill it again in pure spite and with sheer stupidity. It's petty revenge politics. And who gets hurt? It's going to screw over hundreds of thousands of New York and New Jersey commuters, choke off our economy, kill good-paying jobs. It affects New Jersey. More people use it to commute from New Jersey than from New York. What Trump has done on Gateway is vindictive, reckless, and foolish. And if Donald Trump thinks he can use New Yorkers, New Jerseyites, commuters, small businesses, union construction workers, and the first responders as political pawns, it will backfire on him spectacularly. We will fight the president on this in every way to preserve this crucial, vital infrastructure project, crucial and vital to New York, New Jersey, the Northeast economy, and the whole American economy. I yield the floor.
Have an opportunity to end the charade today. We'll be voting in the next few moments. I expect they won't. Why? Well, for starters, the minority leader believes every day gets better for us. I'm not sure who the us is, but that's what he believes. He must be talking about Democrat leadership, Democrat politicians. Can't be talking about people all across the country. Not the people who work every day to keep our country safe. Not the federal workers who aren't getting paid. Oh no, he can't be talking about them when he refers to every day gets better for us. What Senator Schumer and Democrats in this body are really saying is this: every day of this Schumer shutdown strengthens their alliances with the far left activist groups. These radicals hold the reins on today's Democrat Party. They're driving the stagecoach. Schumer's not leading this. Jeffries isn't leading it. The people that are driving the stagecoach are the left-wing activists, and they are driving it over the cliff. Let me give you another reason why I suspect Democrats will once again refuse to reopen the government. It's because the far-left activist groups are pressuring the Democrats to keep the government closed until after their radical anti-America rally, which is going to be held this weekend. The rally, which some have labeled the I Hate America rally, is going to take place Saturday, and there'll be rallies in D.C. and across the country. We've just heard from the minority leader on the floor inviting people to attend these rallies, to participate, what I have referred to and others have as the I Hate America rally. He is a cheerleader for these far left activist groups and their causes. All these rallies are going to be led by the far left activists, and all will be calling on the Democrats to keep the government closed. And the Democrats in this body are beholden to every single one of these far left activist groups, groups like, quote, #ResistTrump and American Atheists. So here's a headline from Politico. Chuck Schumer's critics are satisfied for now. The article goes on to quote the head of the far-left activist group called Indivisible. This group is organizing Saturday's radical rally. The leader of the far-left group says of the minority leader, he said, quote, "He hasn't surrendered yet. I call that progress, and we're cheering him on now." Well, 7 months ago, that same person had a very different message for the minority leader. That same person said, quote, "Senator Schumer should step aside as leader. Every Democrat in the Senate should call for him to do so." So what changed? Well, Senator Schumer started towing the line of the far-left group. He shut down the government in spite of the fact that 13 times when Joe Biden was president, he voted for a clean continuing resolution to keep the government open. Well, what changed? Well, the minority leader is now the puppet of the radical, extreme, dangerous, scary wing of his party. He's huddled with the far-left activist group for months before this shutdown. Months. They organized this shutout in Senator Schumer's office. They organized a war room for the shutdown.
Follow and engage with C-SPAN on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at C-SPAN.
71, executive calendar number 460.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, today is left activists. These radicals hold the reins on today's Democrat Party. They're driving the stagecoach. Schumer's not leading this. Jeffries isn't leading it. The people that are driving the stagecoach are the left-wing activists, and they are driving it over the cliff. Let me give you another reason why I suspect Democrats will once again refuse to reopen the government. It's because the far-left activist groups are pressuring the Democrats to keep the government closed until after their radical anti-America rally, which is going to be held this weekend. The rally, which some have labeled the I Hate America rally, is going to take place Saturday, and there'll be rallies in D.C. and across the country. We've just heard from the minority leader on the floor inviting people to attend these rallies, to participate, what I have referred to and others have as the I Hate America rally. He is a cheerleader for these far-left activist groups and their causes. All these rallies are going to be led by the far-left activists, and all will be calling on the Democrats to keep the government closed. And the Democrats in this body are beholden to every single one of these far-left activist groups, groups like, quote, #ResistTrump and American Atheists. So here's a headline from Politico. Chuck Schumer's critics are satisfied for now. The article goes on to quote the head of the far-left activist group called Indivisible. This group is organizing Saturday's radical rally. The leader of the far-left group says of the minority leader, he said, quote, "He hasn't surrendered yet. I call that progress, and we're cheering him on now." Well, 7 months ago, that same person had a very different message for the minority leader. That same person said, quote, Senator Schumer should step aside as leader. Every Democrat in the Senate should call for him to do so. So what changed? Well, Senator Schumer started towing the line of the far-left group. He shut down the government in spite of the fact that 13 times when Joe Biden was president, he voted for a clean continuing resolution to keep the government open. Well, what changed? Well, the minority leader is now the puppet of the radical, extreme, dangerous, scary wing of his party. He's huddled with the far-left activist group for months before this shutdown. Months. They organized this shutout in Senator Schumer's office. They organized a war room for the shutdown. They're calling the tune. Senator Schumer even gloated to Punchbowl News, quote, we thought about this long in advance. This isn't something that just happened. They've been planning this. This is premeditated. It's a political game for Senator Schumer and the Democrats, and it is a dangerous game for every other American. People aren't receiving paychecks because Senate Democrats want to prove their allegiance to the far left. Democrats want a standing ovation this Saturday when they rise to address the radical wing of their party, the wing that's holding the reins and holding them tightly, a wing that's extreme, dangerous, and scary, that is pro-crime and anti-America. That's what we're facing, Mr. President. Senate Democrats want to be cheered on for holding hostage the paychecks of the TSA agents and air traffic controllers. Meanwhile, Americans are sick and tired of Democrats' dangerous political games. They just want to get back to work. Today, Democrats are going to have an opportunity to prove that they aren't beholden to the far left of the party. We're going to have a vote. We're going to vote on a bipartisan appropriations bill as well to fund the Department of Defense, to fund the warfighters, the troops, the people who keep our nation and our allies safe. Now, Mr. President, this bill has already come through a bipartisan appropriations committee. The vote was 26-3. 26 voted for it, only 3 voted against it. That same bill we're bringing to the floor today. And we're going to see if the Democrats are going to work with us on the bipartisan appropriation bill. They claim they want regular order. They claim they want things to work together. And it's a bill that they have said themselves it's necessary. Now, remember, Senator Schumer last year didn't bring a single appropriations bill to this floor of the Senate, in spite of the fact that 12 bipartisan bills passed out of the committee. He refused to bring any of them to this floor to fund the government when he was majority leader. Wonder who he's going to side with today. Senate Republicans this year have already approved 3 appropriations bills to fund the government. This will be the 4th. Democrats are holding the government hostage. They're holding the American people hostage. Republicans are committed to reopen the government. We are going to vote against that today. We're holding votes on our bipartisan, clean, continuing resolution, one that Democrats have voted on 13 times in favor of when Joe Biden was in the White House. Now, I believe that Democrats have an opportunity as well as an obligation to end the Schumer shutdown. We should end it today. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Democrat Whip.
Mr. President, last week we learned that Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado had won this year's Nobel Peace Prize. This is a photograph of her. She did so for her steadfast and courageous fight for democracy in the once proud nation of Venezuela that unfortunately now, under a man named Maduro, has descended into chaos and dictatorship. I had the chance to visit Venezuela in 2018, just before the country's strongman Nicolas Maduro staged a sham election. The years that followed were a predictable disaster, bringing further suffering on the Venezuelan people. In late 2023, under severe repression, the Venezuelan opposition organized a primary election that selected Ms. Machado as its candidate for the July 2024 presidential election. Using a tired old playbook, the Maduro regime refused to allow her on the final ballot. Undeterred, her colleague Edmundo Gonzalez was able to run in her stead. Not surprisingly, given the country's near-failed state status, he won over Maduro with 2/3 of the vote in a process meticulously documented by domestic election observers. What did the Maduro regime do? It shamefully refused to swear him as the successor into office and forced him to flee the country. But Maria Corina Machado refused to leave. She stayed, while the regime arrested key opposition supporters and threatened her as well. And while she remains in hiding for her own safety, she has continued to fight for those election results to be respected and a return to democracy in Venezuela. That steadfast courage in the face of such cruelty is incredible and certainly worthy of the Nobel Peace Prize. Senator Jeanne Shaheen and I were on the telephone yesterday with this brave young lady. She was as determined as ever to see a better future for the people of Venezuela. She has my continued admiration and support in that effort. On another topic, Mr. President, I want to say a few words about events in the Middle East and Ukraine. Over the long weekend, the world saw what is hopefully the beginning of the end of the war in Gaza. I want to congratulate President Trump for the historic agreement that made this possible. There are still critical elements to be negotiated and settled. But the first phase, which included the release of the Israeli hostages and a ceasefire, is a good faith start to a more inclusive agreement. It won't be easy. The remaining steps will be difficult and require sustained attention from President Trump and our allies that help make the beginning of this agreement a reality. As New York Times columnist Tom Friedman wisely wrote this week, and I quote him, "You don't have a second to rest. As someone who wants you to succeed, I have to remind you, as hard as the first state was, you've not seen the hardest yet." I agree. There's been so much pain and suffering sparked 2 years ago from Hamas's brutal October 7th attack and the ensuing war, and it'll take a long time, if ever, to heal. But this is the best chance in a long time toward a more hopeful future where both people, Palestinians and Israelis, can live in peace. Similarly, I hope President Trump will now focus momentum from these events and equal attention on seeking an end to the war in Ukraine. I've said before, I don't begrudge President Trump for trying to engage Russian President Putin to negotiate an end to this terrible conflict. But it should be clear to everyone, and I hope it's clear to President Trump, Putin isn't interested or serious. In fact, Putin has only increased his deadly attacks on Ukraine since good faith outreach by the United States. Similarly, it's long overdue that the Senate pass bipartisan Russian sanctions, a bill that now has 80 bipartisan sponsors, a bill I'm happy to support. Putin only responds to force, military or economic, and it's time for the President and Congress to stand behind the people of Ukraine and to increase this pressure on President Putin. Mr. President, on a separate matter, I'd like to respond to the comments made by my colleague and friend, Senator Barrasso from Wyoming, on the floor this morning. Why is this government shut down? Why? What is the reason for it? The President's party is in control in the White House, in the House, and in the Senate, and yet we've stopped and the government shut down. Why? Because there's a fundamental issue we're trying to resolve for the good of the American people. And what is it? Well, let me give you an illustration. What if I told you, if you live in Illinois, that October 27th, your health insurance company is going to send you a notice at your home. It's going to announce what's going to happen to your health insurance premiums on your insurance on January the 1st of this coming year. It's also going to tell you, for many people, there's going to be a dramatic increase. Dramatic. 114%. Your premium is going to more than double. Some people will say, that's all right, got plenty of money in the bank, not worried about it a bit. But most people will say, doubled? It's already too high. What am I going to do? How am I going to afford this? What's it going to do to my family budget if I have to pay twice as much January 1st for my health insurance? How did this happen? Who did this? It's called the big, beautiful budget bill of President Trump. That's what did it. There's a tax credit that's available for millions of American families to help them pay for their health insurance premium. The Republicans eliminated it. And when they eliminate it, people are on their own to come up with the money for pay for the health insurance. Is it important? I think it's critical. It's one of the most basic questions you're going to ask when you ask, how's your family doing? Are you doing okay when it comes to health insurance? If you had an unexpected large medical bill, do you have insurance to cover it? Well, for thousands, maybe millions of Americans, the new health insurance plan is going to be too expensive for them to pay the premiums. So what do? Well, you look for a plan that has a lot of money out of pocket expenditures by the people who are covered. It's a skinny policy, only in catastrophes and calamities. And that, unfortunately, is all you have. And in the meantime, you're in a situation where your family tomorrow may face a medical bill which could break the bank. That's what it comes down to. That's what this shutdown is about. We believe the Republicans should help us in helping the families across America. As I said, October 27th is a day of reckoning in Illinois for people who are policyholders there. It's going to happen across the United States. It's a policy they created on the Republican side, and we should work with them to change it. The sooner, the better. I yield the floor.
The clerk will report the motion to invoke cloture.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a close debate on the motion to proceed to calendar number 168, H.R. 5371, an act making continuing appropriations and extensions for fiscal year 2026 and for other purposes, signed by 17 senators.
By unanimous consent, the mandatory quorum call has been waived. The question is it the sense of the Senate that debate on the motion to proceed to H.R. 5371, an act making continuing appropriations and extensions for fiscal year 2026 and for other purposes shall be brought to a close? The ayes and nays are mandatory under the rule. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alston-Brooks. Ms. Baldwin. Mr. Banks. Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Bennett. Mrs. Blackburn. Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Blunt-Rochester. Mr. Booker. Mr. Bozeman. Mrs. Britt. Thank you. Mr. Budd. Okay, thanks. Ms. Cantwell. Mrs. Capito. Mr. Cassidy. Ms. Collins. Mr. Coons. Mr. Cornyn. Ms. Cortez Masto. Mr. Cotton. Mr. Kramer. Mr. Crapo. Mr. Cruz. Mr. Curtis. Mr. Daines. Ms. Duckworth. Mr. Durbin. Ms. Ernst. Mr. Fetterman. Mrs. Fisher. Mr. Gallego. Mrs. Gillibrand. Mr. Graham. Mr. Grassley. Mr. Haggerty. Ms. Hassan. Mr. Hawley. Mr. Heinrich. Mr. Hickenlooper. Ms. Hirono. Mr. Hoven. Mr. Husted. Mrs. Hyde-Smith. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Justice. Mr. Kane. Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Kim. Mr. King. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Langford.
Mr. Thune.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Thune. No.
On this vote, the yeas are 51, the nays are 45. 3/5 of the senators duly chosen and sworn not having voted in the affirmative. The motion is not agreed to.
Mr. President,
Majority Leader.
I enter a motion to reconsider.
Motion is entered. The clerk will report the motion to invoke cloture.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a close debate on the nomination of Harold D. Moody III of Alabama to be United States District Judge for the Northern District of Alabama, signed by 17 senators.
By unanimous consent, the mandatory quorum call has been waived. The question is it the sense of the Senate that debate on the nomination of Harold D. Moody III of Alabama to be United States District Judge for the Northern District of Alabama should be brought to a close? The yeas and nays are mandatory under the rule. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Also Brooks.
Yep.
Ms. Baldwin. Mr. Banks. Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Bennett. Mrs. Blackburn. Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Blunt-Rochester. Nomination, the judiciary, Harold D. Moody III of Alabama to be United States District Judge for the Northern District of Alabama. Nomination, the judiciary, Harold D. Moody III of Alabama to be United States District Judge for the Northern District of Alabama.
This time, President Trump has been working to
shutting down the government rather than even considering talking to us about how we prevent these premiums from doubling across the country. I have been listening to folks back home who are painfully aware healthcare premiums are about to skyrocket and who are deeply concerned about what it is going to mean for their families and for their communities. So last week, when the Republican leaders sent us home, yet again, instead of working with us to end this shutdown and address the healthcare crisis, I made a visit to Seymour Community Health Center's Oak Harbor Clinic. Why? To hear from doctors and healthcare providers about what is just beyond the horizon if Republicans insist on inaction. I heard about how healthcare cuts Republicans passed are going to devastate our hospitals, devastate our clinics and health centers. And I heard about how these massive premium hikes that are being announced right now, the ones Republicans are trying very hard to ignore, are going to push millions of people off their health care plans. One person I spoke with serves on the board of an insurer on the Washington Health Benefit Exchange. He warned me that if we do not save these ACA tax credits, they are anticipating so many customers will be priced out that the number of individuals they cover through the marketplace will drop 35 to 50%. You know, there's already a loud chorus of people speaking out concerned about this in my state and across the country. I have spoken with small business owners who are going to see their premiums double, even triple, and some quadruple, and who are having to rethink whether they try to keep their small business doors open and maybe go without coverage, or alternatively, just pack it in and try to find a job with an employer-sponsored plan. I have spoken with retirees that are not yet old enough for Medicare, who've gotten notice that their monthly premiums are about to go through the roof. In some cases, we are talking about thousands of dollars a month. And here's the thing, not only do I know there are more stories like this across the country, I also know there are going to be many more stories pouring in very shortly. Because the reality is there are rate hikes in the mail right now, going out to people who had no idea about the Republican healthcare crisis and that it was going to hit them in the end. Rates are being set now. People are window shopping in many states and panicking from the sticker shock. In Idaho, open enrollment is now underway. It has started. That means right now families are seeing the cold, hard numbers and the sharp increase it will cost them to stay covered. And in 2 weeks, that same nightmare is coming to every state in the country. Who do Republicans think they are fooling when they try to just ignore this? What in the world are they talking about when they say deal with it later? These price hikes are about to get locked in. There is no later. We need to act now. There was an earlier, though. Perhaps we should talk about that for a minute, because Democrats have been calling for action on this for months. And where were Republicans? Why wouldn't Republicans sit down with us to talk about health care in September? Why wouldn't they talk about health care in August? Why couldn't they find a single minute to work with us on health care in July or June or even May? After all, they had plenty of time this summer to shovel tax breaks at billionaires and put over $1 trillion in health care funding on the chopping block. They spent months on billionaires, but they can't be bothered when it comes to health care. They can't be bothered to help our working families. They would rather shut down the government than sit down and talk about preventing these premiums from doubling. But Democrats are going to talk about health care, whether Republicans want to or not. House Republicans have been hiding from this issue for a month. I'm not kidding. They have literally been on vacation for nearly a month now. Hiding from this problem will not make it go away. Those rate hikes are in the mail. They are going out to our constituents. Window shopping is going live. Folks can now go online in many states and see the exact cost of Republican inaction. And open enrollment is still marching ahead. It is underway now in Idaho, and in a few weeks it's going to be across the nation. If you are a Republican who thinks that somehow families will not notice their premium doubling, somehow they won't mind that their health care costs jump a couple $100 a month, or in some cases, by the way, a couple $1,000 a month, here's some advice. Stop taking your marching orders from billionaires like President Trump and start listening to those people back home. Talk to the farmers. Actually, a quarter of them are covered on these exchanges. Talk to small business owners like I have. Talk to employees, many of whom are covered through this exchange, because they are the ones who will feel the pain from this, and they know it. And they are begging Congress to act. And you know what? 3/4 of the people who rely on the ACA tax credits live in red states. And the 10 states where folks who lose these tax credits will see the largest premium increases, they're all red states. So shutdown or not, Republicans can only ignore this issue if they ignore their own constituents. So to our Republican leaders, don't hide from your constituents. Don't hide from this healthcare crisis you're causing. Quit hiding from the negotiating table. The clock is not just ticking, the alarm is going off. We need to act now before these premium hikes become unavoidable. Democrats are at the table. We always have been at the table. We're ready to work out a deal that reopens the government and addresses the health care crisis. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
The senator from Iowa is recognized.
Mr. President, it's day 16 of the Schumer shutdown. During this time, President Trump has been working to guarantee that our troops get paid, ensure women and children continue receiving food assistance, and end the conflict in the Middle East. Meanwhile, the Democrats continue holding the government hostage. As a result, air traffic controller shortages are causing flight delays, and some rural airports in Iowa may soon be forced to suspend operations. Seniors have lost access to some health services. The FDA is unable to process new drug and medical device applications, delaying the availability of new medical products. And Senator Schumer is taking pride in his shutdown, claiming, quote, "Every day gets better for us," end quote. Who is this us that it's getting better for? Because I know my folks back home really don't appreciate that attitude. Only a Washington politician would delight in causing such dysfunction. And while Congress will be paid for failing to do its job, many essential government employees who have continued to work through this shutdown will likely miss their next paycheck. The President is ensuring our troops get paid this week, a move that is being protested by some Democrats. Now, my daughter serves on active duty. She is a young Army officer. She had to sit down and counsel her troops last week on where they could go to get loans so they could make their obligated payments. So thank you, President Trump, for taking care of my daughter and her soldiers. Meanwhile, 750,000 non-essential government employees who haven't worked at all in these past weeks will be paid for doing nothing. It costs $400 million every workday to provide back pay to those that are furloughed during Schumer's shutdown. As of today, the price tag to pay non-essential bureaucrats not to work is $4.8 billion. $4.8 billion. Taxpayers should all be asking, why is Washington spending money on anyone or anything that is non-essential? President Trump is permanently eliminating many of these non-essential positions as part of a reduction in force, or RIF. So here are some of my suggestions for getting rid of the riffraff with a RIF. First up, eliminate the positions of federal employees and contractors who weren't even working before the government shutdown. While millions of Americans have 2 or more jobs to make ends meet, these federal employees aren't working at all. There are dozens of national laboratory employees with nothing to do who spend the workday catnapping or playing cards and games. To pass time, one of them started journaling. One of his entries reads, quote, "Did nothing all day today, over 10 hours in here." The following day he wrote, quote, "I do hope to play another good game of chess." They're not the only ones with nothing to do. A Department of Energy contractor actually filed a complaint that he was getting paid for work he wasn't doing. So good on him, at least he's honest. For years, he and his co-workers have been spending their time looking for things to do, watching Netflix and taking naps. He says he is, quote, "begging for work," adding, "I can't believe I'm getting paid to do nothing." If federal employees can't even justify their own salary, how can anyone else? I've also uncovered bureaucrats who are holding several different government jobs simultaneously, but aren't doing any of them. For example, a full-time HUD employee was being paid for 2 other full-time, got this, folks? Okay, she was being paid for 2 other full-time government contractor jobs. So that's 3 full-time jobs in total. She frequently billed taxpayers for working more than 24 hours in a single day. Gosh, if I could find more than 24 hours in a day, that would be pretty extraordinary. But this woman was paid $225,000 for hours she never worked in nearly 3 years. 3 full-time jobs, people, not working any of them. This isn't an isolated case either. I've introduced my Double Dippers Act to cross-check paychecks and payrolls to identify and stop bureaucrats from double billing taxpayers for work they're not even doing. Okay, don't laugh. This is true here. There are plenty of other non-essential jobs that can be eliminated immediately, beginning with the multitude of gimmicky government mascots. I'm not talking about Smokey the Bear, okay, not talking about Smokey the Bear, but rather the other costume characters you've probably never even heard of, like the National Park Service's Lupe the Ringtail, who is so frightening that Lupe makes children cry. Owlie Skywarn. Oh, I'm sure you've all heard of Owlie Skywarn with the National Weather Service. Another Park Service mascot, Riley the Roadrunner. Puddles the Blue Goose with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And everybody's favorite, Franklin the Fair Market Fox from HUD. I say let's furlough these fur balls forever. Tax dollars should never be spent paying for any of these do-nothing jobs, especially when there are severe staffing shortages for critical jobs like air traffic controllers and VA health care providers. The folks who are working these important jobs are too often overworked, understaffed, and underappreciated. So these folks can go. I commend all of those essential workers who are doing the jobs that we need done on a daily basis. They continue to answer the call of duty during the Schumer shutdown without knowing when they may receive their next paycheck. Thank you for putting your country first, and on behalf of my fellow Iowans, I also would like to extend from them a very hearty thank you. And to those who have been collecting paychecks without even working, even before this shutdown began, all I can really say is thanks for nothing. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.
We are about to proceed to a vote on a motion that the majority leader has laid on the floor. And I am the senior Democrat on the subcommittee of appropriations that writes the bill that funds our national defense. I've worked well and closely with Senator McConnell in this undertaking this year, and I'm about to vote no on proceeding to take up the House defense bill, which may surprise some of my colleagues from both parties or my constituents or folks wondering what the heck is going on here. So I wanted to take a few minutes and speak to this moment, my vote, and hopefully our path forward. Americans care deeply about security, about the security that comes from knowing that you and your family won't suddenly be bankrupted by unexpected health care costs, the loss of health insurance, and the security that comes from knowing that millions of highly skilled, trained, and dedicated American men and women are on the line around the world, shoulder to shoulder with our allies, defending America's security and that of the world. And we need a path towards addressing both. The federal government is currently shut down because we can't come to an agreement here in the Senate with the President, with the House, to deal with the expiring Affordable Care Act tax credits that make it affordable. Letters are about to go out in my home state of Delaware that'll tell folks who get their health insurance through the Affordable Care Act, their rates are going to go up dramatically, in many cases more than 100% because of expiring tax credits. What's that got to do with national defense? Bluntly, the process here in this Senate, the process with our president, the process of spending or not spending appropriated funds has destroyed a lot of the trust that is essential for the Senate as a body to work, for the Congress to legislate, for our federal government to reopen. In the last Congress, I was the chair of the subcommittee that wrote the appropriations bill. Roughly $32 billion went to USAID, an agency that no longer exists. Some of you may remember DOGE, an Elon Musk-led effort to get into and tear up, and in the case of USAID, tear apart our long-standing, decades-old U.S. foreign assistance program. It did a lot more damage than just that. But in many ways, the actions that began in January and picked up speed in the spring caused alarm and concern by many of us in the Senate that we have an OMB director and an administration willing to violate bipartisan agreements from the last Congress, commitments to spend money, contracts and agreements with partners and allies around the world and across many different areas. In fact, just yesterday, a federal district court judge in California ruled that the reductions in force, the layoffs, the RIFs announced by the administration during this current shutdown were illegal because they were targeted and partisan. So many things have happened this year, it's tough to keep track. But the combination of them has led to a reduction in trust between our two caucuses, trust that is essential to our having an understanding and agreement to move forward. Let me be clear about this year's appropriations process. It was positive. From when we started in March, April, to when we concluded on the committee in July and voted out 8 strong bipartisan bills, the Senate appropriations process for at least 8 of the bills, the biggest bills, was constructive, bipartisan. In fact, the bill that I worked on closely with Senator McConnell was voted out of committee by 26-3. So too were other key bills that deal with housing, that deal with education, that deal with health care. They came out of the committee 26-3 and are ready for action on the floor of the Senate, yet we're not proceeding to them today. There's 4 bills remaining in committee unaddressed. The committee should focus on them, take them up, and work them through. There's 3 bills that have already passed the Senate and are all but done being conferenced with the House. What I have heard from my Republican colleagues is that Leader Thune is trying to move ahead with a process that would put the defense bill, the health and education bill, the housing and transportation bill, which we call Labor HHS and THUD, very compelling names, I know. But he wants to put together a package of many of these bills. Well, if that's the intention, we needed communication between our leaders and our caucuses. We have had a positive and productive process in Senate appropriations this year. But the leader's motion to go to the House defense bill was not expected, was not discussed, was not clear to my caucus as to what happens next. So it is with some real regret that I will vote no today, but continue to talk with my colleagues about how do we move forward. I want to take a moment and just speak to the defense bill that we worked so hard on and that came out of the committee with such strong bipartisan support. It would provide a better quality of life to the men and women of the American military and their families. It would invest in total $852 billion in our national defense, expanding shipyards, expanding munition production, creating stockpiles of critical weapons that we know we need for the future, investing in cutting-edge technologies, and rejecting some of the Trump budget cuts to aid to Ukraine, to Taiwan, to our Baltic allies, making positive progress in key areas. Our work together on this bill has generally been a positive experience between senators and our staff. Our challenge was the department, was the secretary and his budgeteers, who often appeared at hearings and meetings without their homework done, without the details ready, without a budget ready to go. Some of you may have forgotten this, but a principal focus of the administration and the majority here during this same time was the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, and trying to put $160 billion onto the Defense Department, not through regular order, not through the usual budget processes, but through this one-time infusion of cash. Senator McConnell and I historically haven't agreed on much, but we certainly agreed on this in hearings and speeches. If we're trying to invest in the future of our armed forces, whether it's new planes, new ships, new systems, or new technology, doing it with one-year money is unwise and unsound. We need to get back to regular order. We need to get back to a reliable and predictable appropriation process. And in order to do that, we need bipartisan agreement that rejects severe cuts, that restores funding for programs like the NIH and CDC, which is done in the bipartisan Labor H bill, the cuts to WIC and rural housing, which is done in the Ag bill, and we need to move these bills forward. The way we move these bills forward is by linking arms and making it clear. We reject rescissions. We want to appropriate beyond just defense. We want a broader package, and to have clarity from our President, the House, and the Senate about how we address the imminent health security crisis that confronts millions of Americans and for today and tomorrow keeps our government shut down. Americans, Mr. President, care about security. We care about security for our families from health care costs, and we care about security for our nation from the threats that are greater than at any time in my adult life. Let's find a path towards working together to address them. Thank you. And with that, I yield the floor.
He has underscored some points that I think are important to remind us here in the Senate, but also people who are watching as we are in day 16 of government shutdown. There's no great secret as to how we get the government fully functioning again. It is going to come about through cooperation. It is going to come about through good faith efforts by good folks who are intentioned to address the matters in front of us. We deal with politics. This is a political world. But I can tell you that so many of the people that I'm talking to don't really care about the politics of our situation. They don't care if the Democrats are winning or the Republicans are winning. They feel like, as Americans, they're the ones that are being caught in this backwash. They don't understand why their flight was delayed or canceled this morning. They don't understand why the individual that they're trying to get through to at an agency is not picking up the phone, or they get a message saying that that this office is going to be closed until the government is reopened. What they care about is that we figure it out, and that requires communication. It requires talking with one another, and that's why I appreciate much of what my colleague has shared to this, because as we are positioning as two sides that are seemingly dug in on this 16th day of a shutdown, real people are wondering, is their government going to be there for them? Mr. President, I didn't come to the floor this afternoon with a focus necessarily on the shutdown. I came to speak about a situation in my state that has literally closed off, shut down, collapsed whole communities. We had a storm, actually a series of storms, hit the west coast of Alaska just over the weekend. In this smaller inset here, you've got the state of Alaska, but this square panel is where the extent of the damage is. But this was a 1,000-mile storm going from the north up in Kotzebue all the way down into the Bristol Bay region, with the bulk of the damage on these small native communities that are focused on the coasts and up going into the Kuskokwim River. But it has been a disaster of major proportions. As we speak, we have communities that are being evacuated. And we understand when we talk about evacuation what that might mean. But people in these villages, in the villages of Kipnuk and Quigilangok, are being told that you are everyone from your village is being evacuated. And it doesn't mean that you go to a town that's a few miles down the road to get to safety. it means that you are airlifted 500 miles to Anchorage or possibly closer to Bethel. But before I detail some of that, I think it's important to recognize that what we had happening over the weekend, while this massive storm, a storm that was bringing winds in excess of 100 miles an hour, flood surges that were pummeling the coast with inundation levels like we have never seen before. We heard, saw, read the stories of people who were trapped in their homes at night when the home was literally lifted off of its foundation and carried away in the current with families inside. One detail of a father and 4 children who woke his children up to say, we all need to go into one corner of the house in case the house tips. But to hear the fear, really the terror of being trapped in your own home as it is moving out into the ocean current. The U.S. Coast Guard, the Alaska National Guard were on deck, as they always are, saving lives. The U.S. Coast Guard rescued and saved 34 people. The Alaska Air Guard saved 8. The Alaska Air National Guard saved 9. Unfortunately, we did have one individual who is confirmed dead and 2 others that are believed and feared deceased as well, with 1 yet unaccounted for. But sharing the pictures of the extent of the damage, it's amazing that more did not lose their lives. This is a picture of the village of Kipnuk with the inundation. Here's the airport here, the airstrip, and the community literally entirely beneath the water. In this, you can see a little more clearly how the floodwaters have come throughout the entire village. Again, you see boats that are upended, roofs that are ripped off of homes. The destruction is just violent. A home that is drifting in the river water. This is in Kipnuk. This is a picture also in Kipnuk. Kipnuk is a community. Most of these communities many of the communities are what we call boardwalk communities. Boardwalk communities because we don't have roads. So you move about on small 4-wheelers. That's how you get to where you need to get, whether it's to school or otherwise. But literally everything in the community upended. Power poles snapped in half. So you can imagine the condition. There is no power. There is no water. There is no safe place. These individuals have been initially rescued to the schools where they were kept safe. But now what we are in the midst of is this massive, massive evacuation project. More than 1,000 people, again from 11 communities, have now been displaced. You had a situation where in Kipnuk, this village, you have about 680 people that are evacuated into the small school. In Quigilangak, about 400 people took shelter at the local school for a couple days. And keep in mind, don't have running water, restroom facilities aren't functioning. So the efforts that we saw from our search and rescue efforts, from our Coast Guard, from the Guard, from those who have come to to the aid now. Everyone from the World Kitchen to Samaritan's Purse to Red Cross, those efforts have been considerable. And we're getting people to shelter and to safety now. This is a picture that was taken late yesterday evening. This is the inside of a C-130, and there's about 300 people from Kipnuk that have been put inside the C-130. They're all sitting on the floor there, and they're being evacuated to Anchorage, Alaska. Again, this is 400 miles away. The efforts in Anchorage are considerable to make sure that they're going to be in safety, but it is a mass shelter. It is basically it's in our sports arena at the Alaska Airlines Center in an auxiliary gym. They're going to be able to put 350 to 500 people. We're putting a convention center facility together to house another 800. So this is all very, very temporary. But the reality is that for so many of these people, they will not have homes to go back to. About 120 of the homes in Kipnuk will not be, are not repairable. They are completely destroyed. About 40 possible to repair. But again, this is the 16th of October. And conditions in this part of the state of Alaska right now, we're moving into winter. We're moving into winter. And so the idea that you can do construction in the wintertime, it doesn't happen. The last fuel barge to this region until next spring, until probably late May or June, the last fuel barge has come and gone. That means the ability to move supplies in and out and do any kind of construction, that's not happening. So for so many of these are going to be people who will be without a home. But I'm reminded that they are not homeless. They are not homeless. They are evacuees. And all they want is the ability to be safe somewhere for the moment. But looking forward, it's going to be hard. It's going to be very, very challenging to address the issues that they face in their community with the threats that they have. The storm that they had, we get storms every year. We get storms every year, but what we're seeing is an increasing frequency of lethal storms. Several years ago, we had Typhoon Merbok, again coming across from Japan, that just pummeled the coast. Again, a 1,000-mile storm. We're still recovering from Hurricane Merbok, or Typhoon Merbok. And then just last year, again, another series of disasters along this same coast. And then this weekend, Typhoon Halong, once again, coming across from Japan. So the reality is we're seeing more and more of these. And the reality is that these storms come in October, but it used to be that we would already have ice that was coming into these northern waters by then. And the ice was enough to slow things down, to cool the waters down. But when you don't have the ice in the water is warming. This was perhaps an unusual weather pattern that came, but combined with that warmer water, it just churns this typhoon up. And so our reality is we're seeing in real time the impacts when you have a warmer ocean and less ice, which leads you to how you deal with these issues and these matters of resilience. This is hard. This is extraordinarily hard right now. And our hearts are with those who have lost their loved ones, who have lost so much, who have lost their home, but who are so anxious about what this means going forward and how we can be there for them. So I've got a great deal of respect and thanks and admiration for all who are pulling together to provide for relief efforts and to be thinking more long-term about how we ensure that the people of Quig and the people of Kiknuk and the people of Nightmute and Napakiak and Stebbins and Tuksuk and all up and down the coast, that they are safe in their homes where they have lived for thousands of years. Right now, we have the largest gathering of Alaska Natives that are convening in Anchorage for their annual convention. And so much of the convention this year is going to be focused on the matter of resilience and support for our communities. So I share these observations with colleagues, not because Alaska's storm is more powerful or more lethal or more devastating than the storms you may have in your state, Mr. President. Tennessee has seen some awful, horrible flooding. We're seeing this now, but it's a reminder to us here in Congress of the role that we do play, because all of our communities don't have the ability to provide that protection for themselves. So how do we build out more resilient communities? And then further to that point, when the disaster happens, how can we be there to support them in ways that make it real and meaningful for them, particularly in cultures where traditions may just be different than what we know and understand here in Washington, D.C. I'm going to end with a couple comments that were made just the other day when the governor held a briefing, a press conference about the ongoing impacts of this disaster. And one comment was made by U.S. Coast Guard Captain Christopher Culpepper, who said, "If you think about previous instances of major inundations, such as Hurricane Katrina, that will start to paint the picture for what you might imagine what has happened along western Alaska." And then our Adjutant General, General Sachs, said that this may end up being the largest off-road system response for the National Guard in about 45 years. So our reality is hard right now, and it's challenging. But one thing that I know about the people, not only in this region, but the people in my state, is there is a level of resilience, there is a level of determination. They are connected to their place, they're connected to their lands, and we want to make sure that they are able to have that cultural connection, that identity to the place that they have called home for thousands of years. And my final point is those who were literally engaged in rescue efforts to ensure that people were taken out of homes that were floating in the ocean, those that were doing the overflights in miserable storms, those that are there on the ground now, they were all out there doing their job at a time when it was not certain that they were going to be paid. Now that tension point has been resolved because the president announced that our military would be paid through this next pay period. The Coast Guard as well, which is critically important. But I think our job, our responsibility, is to make sure that they don't have to worry about that. When they're flying a rescue mission, they're not thinking about whether or not their spouse at home is concerned about whether they're buying groceries or paying the rent. So we've got work to do here, but to those back home in Alaska who are working so closely on the ground to care for those who are truly afraid right now, truly afraid about their future, know that we are all working with you, and our hearts are with you. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Mr. President,
Senator from Michigan's right.
passed the Protecting Americans from Cyber Threats Act, a no-brainer step to defend our citizens from cyber threats. This is a very wonky law, but it has a very, very simple objective: to encourage companies, private sector companies, to report hacks to the government so that together we can prevent it from happening again. This bill extends protections defined back in 2015 that encouraged companies to report cyber attacks to the federal government. It minimizes the risks companies once faced in reporting these hacks, and in doing so, it makes us all safer. Extending these protections has never been more important. Today, cyber attacks are top of mind for Americans across the country and certainly across the political spectrum. 2 months ago, I traveled to Benton Harbor, Michigan, and Troy, Michigan, two communities, to talk about national security threats and what is keeping Michiganders up at night. Nearly every single person, regardless of profession or party, had a story about cybercrime, identity theft, robocalls and scams robbing people of their life savings, hacks on hospitals for patient data, and shut down access to electronic records. As a former CIA officer and Pentagon official, I've responded to countless threats to American security, but never before have we seen American citizens so exposed to security threats here at home. In the age of cyber warfare, everyday Americans are quite literally on the front lines. And Americans know the stakes. That's why they're scared. One Michigander said to me, quote, "Warfare is still on the ground, still things like rockets, but it's also changed. Cyber warfare can be just as brutal." But more than scared, Michiganders are frustrated. They don't believe that their government is taking the threat of cybercrime seriously. And if we don't renew this law, we will prove them right. On October 1st, the Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act of 2015 expired, last October 1st. That means that companies are no longer incentivized to report hacks to the federal government. When a company self-reports a cyber attack, there is no longer a law to prevent the Justice Department from using that admission against them. And companies once again are incentivized to hide hacks from the government, which makes us all less safe. Companies have to see the government as an ally, not as a threat, and our safety depends on it. Because unlike other threats like tanks and nukes and subs, the weapons used in cybercrimes are not created, owned, and controlled by a government. They are from the private sector. So we have to work together to prevent these attacks. This law has already been consequential. Department of Homeland Security used it to respond to China's relentless Salt Typhoon campaign, which targeted every single American's unencrypted phone calls and text messages. And as long as the law remains expired, America is less safe. As long as we refuse to renew it, we are moving backwards in keeping the country secure. So today, very simple, I'm calling on my colleagues to renew these protections for another 10 years. They're renewed for 10 years at a time, so we can restore our cybersecurity defenses and better protect our nation. There's no good reason not to renew it. Businesses support it. The Trump administration supports it. My colleagues on both sides of the aisle support it. I know there's a proposal out there to extend the law instead of 10 years for just 5 weeks in the House's version of the temporary funding bill. But it's such a pivotal time for something that's actually a bipartisan consensus idea. Half measures shouldn't do. We've known that this was going to expire for 10 years. Americans deserve to have us not kick the can down the road just for another 5 weeks. There's too much at stake, particularly given the losses among the American public. So some things are bigger than party politics, and national security should always be one of them. This law is essential to keeping the country safe, to keeping Americans safe. So I urge my colleagues to renew it. In legislative session, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the consideration of calendar number 182 S.2983, that the Peters substitute amendment, which is at the desk, be considered and agreed to, the bill as amended be considered, read a third time and passed, and the motion to reconsider be considered, made, and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?
Mr. President, I
Senator from
object.
Kentucky.
I object.
Objection, sir.
Mr. President, further, I ask unanimous consent to waive the mandatory quorum call with respect to cloture on the motion to proceed to calendar number 136, H.R. 4016.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, today the Senate has the opportunity to begin consideration of an appropriations bill that is vital to our national defense and to the well-being of the brave men and women who serve in our armed forces. The fiscal year 2026 Defense Appropriations Bill would provide U.S. military services with the funding needed to deter China and Russia, to support our service members and their families, and to strengthen the defense industrial base. The bill would remove the uncertainty that our American troops face about when they will be paid because of the needless and reckless government shutdown that Leader Schumer has directed. I would point out, Mr. President, that passing a continuing resolution, as we have tried to do 10 times now, would also remove the cloud of uncertainty hanging over military paychecks. Mr. President, in July, as the presiding officer is well aware, the Appropriations Committee advanced the Senate version of the Defense Appropriations Bill by an overwhelming bipartisan vote of 26-3. The Senate version addresses major funding gaps across the board. It would invest in shipbuilding, including providing a critical down payment toward an additional DDG-51, the workhorse of the U.S. surface fleet, along with investments in additional Columbia and Virginia-class submarines. It would expand critical munitions production, including air and missile defense interceptors, long-range missiles, and next-generation hypersonic weapons developed by our most innovative firms. It would fund drone and counter-drone technologies, which are increasingly changing the nature of the battlefield, as we have seen in both Ukraine and Israel. And it would sustain security cooperation with close allies and partners whose growing defense capabilities are force multipliers for the United States and contribute to the deterrence of shared adversaries. Finally, Mr. President, this bill would invest in our most precious asset, the courageous, dedicated, patriotic men and women of our armed forces. It shows our continuing commitment to their readiness, well-being, and mission success. Let me commend the leadership, the outstanding leadership of Subcommittee Chairman Mitch McConnell and Ranking Member Chris Coons for their hard work on this bill. I also want to thank Majority Leader John Thune for his commitment to bringing fiscal year 2026 appropriations bills to the Senate floor. This is such a welcome change compared to last year, when then Majority Leader Senator Schumer refused to bring a single one of the 12 annual appropriations bills to the Senate floor for consideration. Mr. President, I want to know from my colleagues that the Senate version of the defense bill was put together with input from 94 of our Senate colleagues who submitted more than 5,800 requests to the committee for our careful consideration. For all of these reasons, Mr. President, I urge my colleagues to allow us to proceed to the consideration of the fiscal year 2026 defense funding bill. We want this to be an open process with an opportunity to add additional bipartisan bills that address vital domestic priorities, including biomedical and scientific research and infrastructure, and we want members to have a voice in the funding decisions that affect all of our states and constituents back home. That is the approach that we took in committee. That is the approach that we want to take on the Senate floor. Thank you, Mr. President.
The clerk will report the motion to invoke cloture.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a close debate on the motion to proceed to calendar number 136, H.R. 4016, an act making appropriations for the Department of Defense for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2026, and for other purposes, signed by 17 senators.
By unanimous consent, the mandatory quorum call has been waived. The question is it the sense of the Senate that debate on the motion to proceed to H.R. 4016, an act making appropriations for the Department of Defense for the fiscal year ending September 30, 2026, and for other purposes, shall be brought to a close? The yeas and nays are mandatory under the rules. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alsobrooks, Ms. Baldwin, Mr. Banks, Mr. Barrasso, Mr. Bennett, Mrs. Blackburn, Mr. Blumenthal, Ms. Blunt-Rochester, Mr. Booker, Mr. Bozeman, Mrs. Britt, Mr. Budd, Ms. Cantwell, Mrs. Capito, Mr. Cassidy, Ms. Collins.
President, the Democrat Party is the party that will not take yes for an answer. We offer Democrats a clean, nonpartisan CR, no Republican policies for them to swallow, nothing for them to object to. They said no. We offer to accommodate their health care demands by guaranteeing them a vote on their proposal if they vote to reopen the government. The answer is no. Okay, fine. So we thought if they don't want to fund the government via continuing resolution, we'll give them the chance to fund the government a different way by attempting to move forward with regular order appropriations bills. And once again, the answer was no. Democrats just voted to block the fiscal year 2026 defense appropriations bill. A bill, I would add, that passed the Senate Appropriations Committee by a robust bipartisan margin. 26-3, I think it was. That's right, Mr. President. After voting last week for an authorization bill to increase troop pay, Democrats just voted against the bill that would actually pay the troops. We have to ask the question, why, Mr. President? Because, to quote a recent news story, this is a direct quote, voting to proceed with the defense bill relinquishes some of the party's leverage, end quote. Relinquishes some of the party's leverage. I mean, who really cares, right? If the troops are paid, as long as the Democrats are able to get what they want. Now, Mr. President, I offered up, and I had conversations with Democrats here on the floor, that if we could get on the defense appropriations bill, the interest they have in adding other bills, I would certainly accommodate. And I suggested that that was the business model that we adopted when we passed the first three-bill package. We got on the Milcon VA appropriations bill, and then we worked collectively, both sides, to try and clear adding the Ag Appropriations Bill, the Ledge Branch Appropriations Bill. We tried to add the CJS Appropriations Bill, which was objected to by one member on the Democrat side. But that's how we fashioned getting these appropriation bills on the floor and getting them voted on. Now, if anything should be clear by now, it's that I am interested in doing a normal appropriations process, unlike what happened when they had the majority, which was the Appropriations Committee would report bills out, 11 of the 12 last year. Not a single one was brought to the floor of the Senate. We've done 3 bills. We're trying to go to conference on them. They're blocking that. So now we bring up the Defense Appropriations Bill, something that should get 80 votes on the floor of the Senate, that, as I said, came out of the committee 26-3, and they're blocking it. Now, there's a path forward here to do appropriations. Get on the bill. And then we'll try and add other appropriations bills as we work with both sides to clear objections and concerns that people have. The fact of the matter is, Mr. President, they didn't have to block us even moving to the bill, because there are multiple opportunities, 60-vote threshold opportunities for them to block it later on if they don't like what happens. This is politics. If anything was needed to demonstrate just how fundamentally uninterested Democrats are in supporting our troops and defending our country, just take a look at this vote. Mere months ago, Mr. President, I say mere months ago, Democrats were complaining about all the damage shutdowns do to hardworking Americans. I literally could fill the rest of this hour with Democrat quotes from the past few years about the devastating impacts of shutdowns. Now, Democrats couldn't care less. They're happy to sacrifice any American and evidently any principle to their political goals. Mr. President, Democrats like to position themselves as the party of the little guy and the defender of hardworking Americans. But as this vote makes clear, who do Democrats really care about? Democrats. Mr. President, I yield the floor, and I move to proceed to legislative session.
Questions on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion's agreed to.
Mr. President, I send a cloture motion to the desk.
The clerk will report.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a closed debate on the motion to proceed to Calendar 168, H.R. 5371, an act making continuing appropriations and extensions for fiscal year 2026 and for other purposes, signed by 17 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I ask consent to read the names be waived,
Without objection.
and I move to proceed to executive session to consider executive calendar number 294.
Questions on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is agreed to. The clerk will report the nomination.
Nomination, the Judiciary, Ann Lee Gaylord Moe of Florida, to be United States District Judge for the Middle District of Florida.
Mr. President, I send a cloture motion to the desk.
The clerk will report.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a close debate on the nomination of Ann Lee Gaylord Moe of Florida to be United States District Judge for the Middle District of Florida, signed by 17 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I ask consent the reading of the names be waived,
Without objection.
and I move to proceed to legislative session.
Questions on the motion? All in favor say aye. All
Aye.
opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is agreed to.
Mr. President, I move to proceed to executive session to consider executive calendar number 372.
The questions on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is agreed to. The clerk will report the nomination.
Nomination, the Judiciary, William W. Mercer of Montana, to be United States District Judge for the District of Montana.
Mr. President, I send a cloture motion to the desk.
The clerk will report.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a close debate on the nomination of William W. Mercer of Montana to be United States District Judge for the District of Montana, signed by 17 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I ask consent the reading of the names be waived,
Without objection.
and I move to proceed to legislative session.
Questions on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is agreed to.
Mr. President, I move to proceed to executive session to consider executive calendar number 373.
Questions on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is agreed to. The clerk will report the nomination.
Nomination, the Judiciary, Stephen Chad Meredith of Kentucky, to be United States District Judge for the Eastern District of Kentucky.
Mr. President, I send a cloture motion to the desk.
Clerk will report.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a close debate on the nomination of Stephen Chad Meredith of Kentucky to be United States District Judge for the Eastern District of Kentucky, signed by 17 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I ask consent the reading of the names be waived.
Without objection.
Senate returned to the days in which we were the greatest deliberative legislative body. Assuming that was ever true, it's hard to find any evidence that it's true today. And it's certainly a basic function of the Congress to do appropriation bills. I've heard a number of my colleagues, particularly Democratic colleagues, complain about the appropriations efforts by the White House, by the administration. They remind us that the Constitution puts in the prerogative, it's the Congress that appropriates. Here we are trying to appropriate to do our constitutional duties, and the vast majority of Democrats stand in the way on one of the most important appropriation bills that we could consider, the defense appropriation bills. Our adversaries, our allies, again, wait, watch for signals that the United States of America is the country it needs to be to defend freedom and liberty around the world. And as of today, we're incapable of funding our Department of Defense. And, Mr. President, I highlighted yesterday in remarks that those who've come to the floor and worried and complained about the military men and women during the shutdown who are not receiving compensation for their service to our nation, the most straightforward way to make certain that those who serve are compensated is to pass the defense appropriation bills authorizing and appropriating the money to make those payments. And yet today we stand, there are those who stood in the path to prevent that from happening. A related topic that I want to address today, Mr. President, is that as President Trump today spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin, and tomorrow he will meet with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, I want to highlight how important it is, how critical it is to securing a resolution to Russia's unjust war in Ukraine. I had intended to give remarks today on this topic, and I opened the Wall Street Journal this morning, and as I was reading it, its top editorial on the editorial page deals with this topic, and I would commend it to my colleagues. It expresses the views as I wish that I could express them so clearly. I'm going to try to do so today, right now. You know, last week we witnessed the long-awaited peace agreement between Israel and Hamas. It did come to fruition. Thanks to the efforts of President Trump and his administration, a ceasefire is holding. Iran has been dealt a crippling blow that has weakened its hold on the region, and Hamas has released all living hostages who had been held captive for more than 2 years. While we recognize there are significant challenges that remain in the Middle East, this marks a critical step toward a just and lasting peace in the region. This agreement would not have been possible without the strength of the United States military, our steadfast alliance with Israel, and making it unequivocally clear to Hamas that the United States is willing and able to assist our ally in war. Through strength, the U.S. brokered a peace deal that serves the security of Israel and the humanitarian needs of Gazans alike. Now, as the conflict in Ukraine has surpassed its 3-year mark, Putin remains undeterred in his mission to carry out his unjust war on the Ukrainian people. Each day this war continues, lives are lost, and the safety, economic stability, and global leadership of the United States are threatened. This war must end. To bring an end to this war, the United States and our allies must maintain pressure on Moscow. As was just seen, we remained pressure on Hamas. One recent and important development in this effort is the potential transfer of U.S. Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. This weaponry will strengthen Ukraine's ability to defend its territory, deter further Russian aggression, and help level the battlefield as negotiations hopefully move forward. By providing advanced precision strike systems, America demonstrates that our commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty is backed not only by words, but by legitimate support that can alter the course of the war. I commend the administration for its efforts to facilitate this transfer and for leading discussions between Ukraine and Russia that hopefully will secure a durable and just peace. The United States cannot act alone. Our NATO allies must also shoulder the burden. President Trump recently secured an agreement with our NATO allies to increase defense spending from 2% to 5% by 2035. This commitment is critical to maintaining the continued defense of Europe. Russia's economy is already under strain, but their capacity to fund conflict will continue without enforcement of steady and severe global sanctions. Before Congress, there's legislation that has widespread support of more than 80 senators from both sides of the aisle. This legislation would deliver a severe blow to Russia's economy and trade. By cutting off the resources that allow Putin to fund this war, we can hasten the path to success in finding peace. Last week, we advanced the Defense Authorization Act, but today we failed to advance the appropriations bill to fund our military. We always should recognize that the world is watching. They're watching us. Our adversaries pay attention, and our allies pay attention. We have to every day make clear the case that it is true the United States is a stable and friendly supporter of our allies and a full-fledged adversary to those who wish to cause us harm. Our adversaries, Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran, are always looking for the opportunity to disrupt our alliances, weaken our resolve, and disturb the free world. It is imperative that the United States stands firm in its support for Ukraine, and in doing so places significant pressure on Putin to show our adversaries that democracy, Democracy will not go undefended. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Mr. Brooks.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate resume legislative session and be in a period of morning business, with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate now proceed to en bloc consideration of the following resolutions, which are at the desk: S-Res 455 and S-Res 456.
Without objection, the Senate will proceed to the resolutions en bloc.
Mr. President, I now ask unanimous consent that the resolutions be agreed to, the preambles be agreed to, and that the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table, all in bloc.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business today, it stand adjourned until 3 p.m. on Monday, October 20th, that the following prayer and that following the prayer and pledge, the journal of proceedings be approved to date, the morning hour be deemed expired, the time for 2 leaders reserved for their use later in the day, and the Senate be in a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes. Finally, that the cloture motion filed during today's session of the Senate ripen at 5:30 p.m.
Without objection.
If there's no further business to come before the Senate, I ask it stand adjourned under the previous order.
Senate stands adjourned till 3 p.m. on Monday.